The Count, his sons, and all soldiers from his force were gobsmacked. The head Salvican was proof that Raiden had killed the invading monster in just 5 minutes and didn't get hit during the battle even once. In their case, they had lost over 150,000 soldiers and 4 warships to fight that very legendary rank monster and still failed, adding more salt to the wound instead of achieving their mission. An intense surge of realization hit Count Horik. Is he your strongest warrior?" asked the exalted noble with a perplexed expression. Legolas, on the other end, nodded with a light smile. Sigh. This also assured the Count and his sons that they did right by asking the Misthios Guild to work for them. Now, even losing those legendary monster cores that were worth a fortune didn't feel like a bad deal at all. What use could wealth provide if you were dead? The priority was to get rid of these calamities first and recuperate their losses first. Besides, the lives of millions of people were also at risk. As the leader, the Count had to worry about that more than money. In their agreement, Misthios Guild was leaving the bodies of the monsters to them, which could be sold in the market and gain a lot of money and resources to make up for their losses. For the first time, they felt apologetic for their haughty behavior against the elf and his guild just because they were nobles, because people of their caliber stood at the peak of strength and skills, something their status as nobles could never help them achieve. Count Horik then slowly bowed towards the elf and the hybrid samurai warrior, and so did his sons, no longer having a halo of superiority in their demeanor. Swoosh! Just then, Scorpion also appeared and nodded at Legolas. Tell your people to quickly harvest the body. Other people from your rival noble factions were actually keeping an eye on this battle, he informed. This revelation shocked the 3 noblemen, their hearts filling with trepidations. Not only did their surrounding forces send these monsters into their domain, but were also monitoring their borders without them finding out. If not for Raiden killing the monster, the rival force could have used that as an excuse to invade their lands and forcefully acquire their territory in the name of helping to kill the monster. This was a grave matter, and they wouldn't have found it out if not for a saint assassin like Scorpion directly informing them. This way, please, spoke the old Count as he led both saints towards the warships. One of his sons and some of their ships, as well as battalions, decided to stay behind to take control of the situation and salvage the body of the Salvican. 1 hour later, the warships reached a vast open region of the territory that was filled with riverbanks and lakes. During their flight, Legolas saw many towns destroyed and sunken boats that looked rotten to their core, as if some sort of ailment had afflicted this region. The next one, we failed to kill it from time to time. It's a sea serpent type of monster. The reason why it couldn't die was because the confluence was too large and deep. No matter how many times our forces attacked, the monster would hide in the deep waters and escape to the estuary, explained the Count. I see. So it was no different than having a home ground advantage while always having a few escape routes ready, spoke Legolas with a considerate expression. Finally, they stopped 20 kilometers away from the riverside, and Raiden left to look for his next hunt. Omega was already comparable to a peak 3rd stage saint, close to breaking through to the next level. However, the last 5 levels were always hard to overcome for some reason and took way too much time despite having enough resources. Rathnar had already explained that this was their bodies reading themselves to adapt to the next transformation of strength. This phenomenon applied to both monsters and saints alike, since the laws of reality were the same for everyone living in Vantria. Swoosh! Raiden's figure then flashed in the air, and this time, he hid his aura. The priority was to find the target and lure it into a beneficial battlefield. The closer this said sea monster was to the sea, the easier it could escape and their efforts would be wasted. And legendary rank monsters weren't just brainless things who could be fooled easily. Even the Salvican he killed earlier was smart enough to attack using the debris and shot at him with hundreds of bullets coated with the toxin in the sky. This was more than enough to kill a 1st stage saint easily. Meanwhile, Legolas also was sharing the sight and was commanding the samurai warrior through telepathy link. Reveal some of your aura first. Let it think that you're weaker and invading its territory. You know what to do next. He ordered Raiden from his location inside the warship. Shwoom! Shwoom! Raiden followed the command and revealed his saint pressure, masking his original aura of a variant monster. The silver aura permeated the surroundings, and after a dozen minutes, growl, hiss, hiss. First, it was growling, and then a hissing sound echoed in the region. Soon, the noise of plunging tides echoed in the region as a massive gray body emerged 8 kilometers away at the center of a confluence of rivers. Sensing an external invader, the sea monster had finally decided to show itself. Omega sensed this aura and let out a smirk. Flicker. His image flickered and reappeared right above the sea monster's body in the deep waters. 6 heads with eyes, hundreds of massive teeth while breathing out yellow gas appeared out of the body of water. There were thousands of bone spikes coming out of its body, and even the chest region had a wide and deep mouth filled with thousands of sharp teeth. What kind of creature is this? Queried Khan to the system. It is called Venial Carto. It's a high-tier dungeon boss of aquatic type of dungeons. Its breath is venomous and can instantly rot and paralyze anyone who breathes it. Reported the system. I see. That explains the rotten towns and boats. This monster used its breath to destroy those places. Said Khan. Master, let me do it my way. Urged Omega as he wanted to use his own method to kill this legendary rank creature. Go ahead. Just keep the body intact. Commended Khan. Boom! Sizzle! Sizzle! Violent flames suddenly burst in the sky as Omega summoned and equipped the Twilight armor this time. This was his burst mode armor, which tremendously rose his strength and overall damage output. And he took out Kojin this time, equipping it in the main hand while releasing the dark red dragonfire over its blade. He looked down at the Hydra-like monster that was already fear-stricken after sensing Omega's real strength. The latter, on the other hand, only gave a grim and murderous look at the former and spoke in a ghastly tone. Land or sea? There's no escape from me. Raiden, who had equipped the Twilight armor, gave an astute expression as he saw the 200-meter-long snake-like creature running for his life after sensing the former's overbearing and horrifying aura. But instead of rushing anything, he snickered under his black mask. His crimson-red eyes in this form revealed a spark as if he had already caught the target. He directed his left palm towards the sea monster that was descending deep at an extremely fast speed underwater. Gravity extraction! Exclaimed Raiden, and suddenly, burble, burble. The wide and deep river suddenly parted into 2 as all the water was pulled in the sky, leaving only a wide bottom visible. On top of it, no water from the river stream entered this place or left outside. Millions of gallons of water was lifted by Raiden in the sky as if it was as easy as breathing for him. Unlike Khan, who had gravity law skills only in name, Omega was the actual successor of Skoll and Hattie, the mythical rank Wolf brothers who acquired the gravity law through their own skills and efforts. Before their deaths, they had parted a fragment of their souls, carrying their knowledge and wisdom of the gravity law that Omega had absorbed in his mind. Whenever Omega wasn't in action or had anything to do, instead of resting or wasting time, the Hrodvitner subordinate trained himself in his swordsmanship skills and gravity law skills. In the past year, his control and understanding of this law rose to a completely different level, something even Khan could not achieve without receiving enlightenment or inherent talent. And now, he was getting a chance to use the skills he was developing all this time in a battle for the first time. Hiss! The 6 heads of Venial Carto hissed loudly, reacting to this phenomenon, and started slithering as best as it could towards the other body of water. Only a few kilometers away, there was the estuary. Once it reached that part, it could directly escape to the seas so deep that even someone like his powerful enemy wouldn't be able to capture it. Where do you think you're going? Asked Raiden in an amicable voice as if they were longtime friends. Mraya! Screech! Hiss! The monster let out several bellows and screeches, but the following moment, its massive 50 meters tall body started ascending towards the sky as if some invisible force was lifting it high in the sky. It moved its body rampantly and haphazardly, but to no avail. As if a fish out of water, it couldn't do anything since it was an aquatic dungeon boss and not an aerial one. The massive and maw-like mouths, it had suddenly targeted the enemy in the sky, and as soon as they both reached the same altitude, all the eyeless heads of Venial Carto spread wide and spewed a massive stream of yellowish-green venomous gas at Raiden. intending to rot and kill him on the spot with its most dangerous ability. However, as soon as the latter was covered inside this enormous cloud of venomous gas, sizzle, crackle, boom, a loud explosion resounded, sending sonic booms in the surrounding area, which shook all the trees and plant life over the borders of the river. The massive cloud of gas was now replaced with nothing but a black and red fire that burned and engulfed the venomous gas from within. In his hands was Kojin burning with black and red dragon fire. The monster shuddered, gravely scared for its life and feeling helplessness at the same time. "Gravity imprisonment!" shouted Raiden, and the next moment, the massive bodies of water dropped on the ground as the dual swordsman focused all of his gravitational force on Venial Cardo, making it freeze on the spot. The Venial Cardo started exerting all of its might but couldn't move in the slightest. The control of the gravitational force its opponent had was too strong. Swoosh! Raiden appeared on the left of the massive monster, and soon he raised Kojin high in the air. But this time he joined both of his hands. Boom! A loud burst of dragonfire rose, and right before the terrified Venial Cardo, a massive 100-meter-long katana made completely out of oppressive and destructive black and red dragonfire came to be. The scorching heat was enough to hint at how lethal this weapon was. All the heads of the sea monster were pulled to the front by gravitational force, and Raiden made a decisive strike. Katan Sarashu! Slash! Raiden made a vertical slash as the massive and long katana chopped all the heads of the legendary rank creature in a single move. The monster's body instantly caught fire while the heads started suspending in the air under Raiden's will. For a dozen seconds, its entire body was covered under dragonfire as Raiden roasted the sea snake to medium rare. No one saw how Raiden easily killed the sea monster that was untouched all this time despite facing an army of 100,000 so far. It wasn't just a matter of rank and levels, but pure talent and skills. Right on the open grasslands where the Count's forces and warship had stopped, thud, 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 as if cannonballs attacked from the sky, the Venial Cardo's 6 decapitated heads descended on the open field, shaking the ground and all the people standing on it in a 500-meter radius. The noble and his son as well as all their soldiers were left speechless again as Raiden effortlessly killed another legendary rank monster despite so many adverse conditions. Raiden appeared next to Legolas and spoke. "Get your men, I left the body at the riverside." He spoke, showing no haughtiness but also displaying his proud demeanor. The noble nodded and left a few ships behind to take custody of the body. 1 hour later. Thud! A 20-meter-tall head of a legendary rank monster dropped in front of the exalted noble's forces. This monster had 5-meter-long horns, brown leather-like skin and snout similar to a bison. This species was called Awakens, an earth elemental monster that could control the rocks, boulders, and terrain around it. Plus, the defense its skin had was impenetrable even to an attack from the strongest cannon of a warship. Yet Raiden brought its finely chopped head. He then looked at the Count, who had a pale expression. Now, he was more afraid of Raiden than these legendary monsters. In a calm voice, Raiden asked Count Horik, "So where's my last kill?" The group traveled to the southern end of the exalted noble's territory, exactly on the opposite side of where they started the first hunt. Count Horik had a perplexed expression and his heart was racing with anticipation. He looked at Raiden, Scorpion, and Legolas and spoke in a hoarse tone. "I think all of you should fight this one together. It's the strongest of them all." He iterated in a jittery voice. "Why? Does it have some unique ability?" asked Legolas with a concerned gaze. "We don't even know what it looks like, but our armies couldn't even come 10 kilometers close to its den, let alone do reconnaissance. They were destroyed before they could even send a distress signal. Even the reinforcements barely managed to bring back the survivors." He revealed with a helpless gaze. Soon, Count Horik started recounting their experience in dealing with this final legendary rank monster so far. Legolas, Raiden, and Scorpion nodded in response. They were all skilled hunters in their own right, so they knew how to prepare for this situation first. Finally, The warship stopped 40 kilometers away from the last monster's occupied territory. "Nobody leaves or comes closer," ordered Legolas in an authoritative tone. Swoosh! All of them appeared few kilometers away in the sky and formed a plan. Legolas created 20 doppelgangers on the spot while Ronan created 10. All of them heading to encircle this region, to form a perimeter where no one could enter or interfere in any way. Raiden aka Omega did not have the doppelganger skill, so he was in charge of making the first contact with the said monster. 10 minutes later, Raiden covertly entered 20 kilometers close to the den, but suddenly, roar! An ear-deafening roar that shattered ground, trees, and made tall peaks tremble in this forested region erupted, declaring that the opponent had already noticed Omega. Flap! Flap! In just a minute, a titanic 700-meter-tall body of a legendary rank creature with wings appeared and landed on the ground, giving a deathly stare at Raiden as if giving the last warning. "Master, don't interfere. It's too strong. Comparable to a fourth-stage saint," quickly spoke Omega. Khan then saw the creature with their shared vision. "What the hell is this monster? I've never seen anything like it," spoke Khan. A 700-meter-tall violet-colored monster with the head of a lion, having a long and imposing white mane, stood 10 kilometers away from Omega. But even so, its size was simply too big for anyone to notice as soon as they were at least 300 meters high in the sky. The monster of this caliber was probably the strongest one they had seen in Zivid Empire so far. On its back, 2 massive bat-like wings spread and flapped themselves, sending strong gales in the surrounding area. On its head, 5 massive red horns that were interconnected at the base, forming the shape of the crown of a king, came into sight. On the forelegs and hind legs, red bones extended from the joints. Like a tiger, its body was filled with white and red straps over some parts, signifying its uniqueness. The species in front of the subordinate Omega is called Drigger. This is one of the strongest 12 legendary rank monster species only under god beasts and dragons. This species is proficient in sound and vibration abilities. The roaring skills alone have a tremendous range and can disorient thousands of enemies in large group combat. The host is advised to not engage it directly. Reported and warned the system. Engage it? Even Omega is being cautious. Also, my dimensional cut skill isn't long enough to cut its head off. We need a different strategy. Thought Khan. Master, leave this to me. Like you said, this is my job. Spoke Omega through their link. Khan let out a disgruntled sigh but then spoke. Fine, do as you wish, but run away in case you can't win. He ordered from his location. Raiden then fixated his gaze on the enemy monster. Compared to those he killed so far, this one looked more intelligent and sentient. First, it let out its roar to warn an intruder in its territory. But after sensing that Raiden was as strong as him, it only made a stand to gauge his strength. However, it didn't attack out of nowhere either, rather waited for the invader to make the first move. Raiden on the other end quickly equipped moonlight armor and summoned a 100-meter-long lightning katana. He quickly activated gravity domain, reducing his enemy's agility and physical movements. Kaminari Sarashu! Shouted Raiden, quickly assaulting the enemy with the lightning slash attack while using quick draw skill. Slash! The massive and decisively accurate katana quickly launched itself to make a vertical slashing strike at the speed of light. Clink! Boom! Rumble! However, before the terrifying katana could even come 1 kilometer proximity, a massive burst of intangible and indomitable pressure quickly repulsed Raiden's gravity domain. This eruption of the sound explosion was so strong that it even threw off the Kaminari Sarashu attack and destroyed it in a few seconds. This, said Raiden with an anxious voice. For the first time, his new killer move was thrown off and destroyed by an opponent. Be careful. This one isn't even at mythical rank, but its powers are too deadly, warned Legolas in his mind. Next, Raiden switched to twilight armor and quickly charged at Drigger. Katan Sarashu! He launched the katana made of dragonfire. Bang! However, just like before, the massive and long katana that easily killed and roasted the venial cardo not too long ago was expelled aside, its fire being extinguished into nothingness. Growl! Drigger growled at Raiden, taunting and hinting that the latter wasn't its match. The sound vibrations and shockwaves it sent were already enough to break the gravity domain effortlessly. To this provocation, Raiden then spoke in a grim voice. I see. It's not a battle that can be won with skills and techniques. Rather, it's the kind that's fought with, he declared, and soon, his own figure started transforming and his final words echoed in this battlefield. Raw strength. An eerie and terrifying scene occurred at the center of the battlefield as Omega in his Raiden personal decided that the enemy monster was equally matched in strength and had abilities that could counter his own. Thus, he came to a tacit conclusion. To defeat a monster, you must become one. Boom! 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 Massive explosions after explosions and their aftershocks filled the 10 kilometers radius, and the forested region, including tall trees and plant life closest to the source, was pulverized, and thousands of massive cracks and deep crevices spread across the whole perimeter. Thousands of giant boulders rose from the ground and suspended themselves in the air. Soon, even these massive and heavy boulders started shattering and crumbling into small pebbles in the matter of seconds. The whole 15 kilometers of topography was turned into smithereens. Tall peaks were flattened and the cracks were compressed to sink deep below, as if the gravity in this region had gone haywire and no longer functioned as before. The hard rocks turned into granular sand, and the hundreds of lightning strikes that came from the dark sky stopped midway as if they were frozen in time. Awa! An ear-piercing and ground-shattering howl filled the 15 kilometers of space, and the surroundings froze under a highly dense and compressed heavy pressure. Growl! Boulders rose from the ground again, and tornadoes made of sand swirled around a massive silver body. Dozens of lightnings struck around his body, and finally, the gravitational force that basically flattened everything within the 15 kilometers radius subsided. A 900 meters tall and 350 meters wide and close 1 kilometer long ginormous body of a silver wolf with black scale-like spikes around its forelegs and hind legs as well as under its maw came to be, appearing as dominant and terrifying one could be. For massive fangs with hundreds of sharp teeth were revealed along with claws that were 50 meters in length alone as this ginormous wolf growled. Omega had transformed into his real Hrodvitner form. This time, he was even taller and broader compared to his first evolution. Because now, he had risen in levels, and so did his world energy reserves. In Vantria, for all the monster species, the more mana and world energy one's body had, the bigger they grew in size. Even with these massive sizes, these titanic beings were not slow or had their movements hindered in the slightest. Their strength and range of abilities were simply too great beyond metrics and understanding for a normal person from Earth to fathom. And let's not even mention the normal saints. An 8th stage saint like Havi could travel 500 kilometers just in 12 to 15 minutes easily. Khan had gotten used to these facts long ago. But still, he too couldn't help but feel amazed at how humongous his subordinates were in their true form. In terms of size, the current Omega was only second to Blackwell, who was a variant primordial titan. Even Drigger, who was equally matched in strength, was astounded, his instincts telling him to run away. But how could a prideful monster that could kill hundreds of thousands of enemies alone get scared and become submissive so easily? Rar! The legendary rank creature let out a challenging roar, signifying that he wasn't afraid of the opponent, who suddenly transformed into a giant monster. Thud! 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 Soon, both sides charged, baring their fangs at each other. The distance between them was 7 kilometers, but given the speed and size of these beings, it didn't even take them 30 seconds to close that distance. Flap! Flap! But right when they came a few hundred meters away, Drigger took off high in the air, his wings effortlessly lifting his ginormous body in the sky, leaving Omega with nothing to hit. Thud! Omega stopped midway through his charge and quickly used his newly created ability, aka gravity extraction. This time he pulled his opponent downward instead. Even Drigger revealed a baffled expression because, unlike before, the gravitational force had become much stronger. Little did it know that in human form, Omega would only exert 70% of his strength, and his stats were also suppressed by 20 levels. But now he was at his peak strength. Bang! Drigger's figure was instantly bashed on the ground, sending tremors in the surrounding area as the ground was left with a massive hole big enough to form a pond. Omega then opened his massive and long maw, filled with thousands of spiky and sharp teeth as he pounced on the enemy. Stab! His fangs stabbed into Drigger's back while his black claws tore the fleshy part of the wings that helped the enemy fly so easily. Boom! Shing! However, his body was thrown aback, landing on his back and turning around as Drigger's mouth let out a sonic cry. This burst of sound was so intense that it nearly disoriented Omega completely, and he almost lost the balance of his body. Omega had the gravity law, but Drigger had sound amplification abilities, both being able to hinder their rivals. Flap! Flap! Drigger tried to fly away again. Don't let it gain a higher altitude. Can do long-range attacks then. You will be a toy to play with if it got that advantage, warned Khan, who was watching this battle as if he was part of it. Omega then used gravity extraction again and pulled Drigger down again, the latter crashing heavily on the ground. This time, he was already prepared and jumped a few hundred meters high in the air. Stomp! He directly bit the latter's spine where the bones of the wings were coming from. Roar! This time, Drigger didn't even have a chance to recover his stance before Omega forcefully ripped off one of his wings, rendering his ability to fly. Chomp! Chomp! But this assault didn't just stop there. Drigger too swung his claw and made a massive gash on Omega's neck while he plunged his fangs into Omega's left foreleg. Their rampant struggle was sending aftershocks and causing strong gusts of wind and dust that spread in the nearby region. The loud noises of their roars and bellows spread 20 kilometers of the forested region. Rip! And finally, Omega ripped out the second wing from its foundation. Drigger then used his sonic roar again, sending Omega flying. The latter wailed in pain while the former was also heavily injured during this exchange. Omega bled from the neck and his left foreleg was punctured deep, revealing a big hole in his bones. Drigger, on the other end, had his back gushing with violet blood. Both sides dropped gallons of blood as they received deep and fatal injuries. But their mouths were filled with each other's blood, as they revealed intense bloodlust and killing intent. However, none of them showed an expression of cowardice. This wasn't just a battle between two monsters. This was a battle of pride and supremacy. This was a battle of the tyrants. As the battle continued, both of the heavily injured sides glared at each other vengefully after suffering equally during the first round. Both Omega and Drigger revealed their monstrous auras, trying to suppress and establish dominance over each other. Growled the Hrodvitner subordinate, and in the following moments, crackle, crackle. The flattened ground instantly started cracking as massive boulders and debris arose from the surrounding 10 kilometers radius and started hovering high in the sky. All these boulders and debris then started compressing together, changing their original shape, and soon, hundreds of 50 meters long spears and swords made of stone and hard soil came to be. Over dozens of 100-meter tall spheres formed as Omega excavated the nearby 10-kilometer of region easily. And on top of it, this wasn't even the full range of his capabilities. Omega was using gravity law and his magic swordsman skills even in his monster form. The entirety of the sky above the battlefield was now filled with round boulders. Spears and hundreds and thousands of trees were also uprooted as Omega turned their trunks into pikes, akin to wooden bullets against his ginormous opponent. And now that he had torn off Drigger's wings, it could no longer fly like before. Thud! The variant Fenrir charged at the legendary rank creature. This battle had now turned into a face-off between a lion and a wolf. One was the king of the jungle while the other was the most lethal predator. However, this time, not only did Omega attack the profusely bleeding enemy, but also all of his created weapons and massive boulders charged along with him. Drigger had an aghast expression because now, he was being attacked from all sides and he no longer had any room to escape like before either. It roared again and released another burst of visible and vibrating sound attack that shook the 5 kilometers of region, shattering the ground into dust and the objects and weapons that were hurled at it by Omega. Majority of the stone swords and spears turned into small pebbles and dust after getting hit with this attack, and the following moment, Drigger opened his mouth wide open, aiming at the charging enemy. Bang! It hit Omega while the whole sonic beam attack concentrated at him. But as if already expecting it, Omega leaped to his right in just a nick of time and missed the attack by a dozen meters. Omega's then lunged at Drigger again, because Khan had told him the enemy's biggest weakness. Although the sonic and vibration attacks were extremely dangerous and could shake the entire battlefield, this attack couldn't be performed consecutively by the enemy monster. For each attack, there needed a time interval of a couple of minutes till the user's internal organs and body recovered and started amassing these sound waves inside cumulatively. Otherwise, the attack would be extremely weak, unable to stop any enemy. Meanwhile, all the boulders and spears that were turned to dust because of the sound wave attacks from its mouth were lifted by Omega again and were transformed into their previous weapon shape. Bang! Omega's body crashed into Drigger and his claws stabbed into the latter's spleen. His large fangs, however, aimed at the neck under the mane of the enemy. At this moment, Drigger's body was still in the transition state to create another attack. Just then, over a dozen of those spears stabbed from the other side of the battlefield and dug deep into Drigger's hind legs, making the latter fall on the ground as it lost its footing due to intense pain. The swords, however, were slashing and creating massive gashes and open wounds, making it lose a lot of blood at the same time while the enemy was busy resisting the biting and claw attacks by Omega. Finally, Omega was able to use his skills to his advantage and overpowered the enemy with both brute strength and sheer numbers, as there was no place where the opponent could retreat. Bang! Both sides started clawing at each other and bit wherever they could as their bodies collided, sending shockwaves in the region while the ground was filled with deep crevices. Boom! Omega dropped one of the 100-meter-tall boulders on Drigger's left hind legs. The bones in that leg cracked while Drigger also ripped out a big chunk of flesh from Omega's right foreleg. This second round cost both a great deal again, but compared to Drigger, Omega's injuries were not that grave. Although both of their inbuilt regeneration were doing their work, the wounds were too deep and big to heal in just a short time. The shattered bones needed even more time to mend again before the flesh also started recovering. 1 hour later, this was the 7th round of exchange. Now, Drigger had lost his entire left foreleg, while Omega's entire body was filled with lacerations as his red blood almost turned him into a crimson wolf, instead of a silver one. At this point, both sides bled gallons of blood and the 20 kilometers of the surrounding was completely devastated beyond recognition. And right when both sides were on their last straw, Drigger opened its mouth again, using the most powerful sonic attack that he had been preparing. This time, a terrifyingly lethal roar was directed at Omega, this sonic beam being the strongest attack made by Drigger so far. But instead of trying to run away in his fatally wounded state, thud, Omega took heavy steps and started walking towards the attack skill instead. He growled and kept walking towards Drigger, his body reacting solely to his sheer will. But as a consequence, Omega had to pay a great price for displaying this battle intent. In the following moments, his mouth, eyes, nose and ears started bleeding as waves of vibrations passed through his titanic body, making him bleed even more excessively. The dripping blood didn't touch on the ground. Instead, it was shoved away by the sonic beam attack. But even while facing the opponent in such a sorry state, his indomitable and unyielding eyes displaying his unwavering resolve. Who was he? He was a goddamn variant of a god beast. A mythical rank at that one. Even if the opponent could perfectly counter his gravity law skills and destroy his creations, it didn't mean that Omega couldn't kill them with his own physical strength. Thud. Each time, he cemented his steps deep in the ground and marched forward. The walking then turned into pacing, and the pacing then turned into sprinting. Thud. Drigger's expression turned pale because at this very moment when Omega marched at it with his bloodied body, the sonic skill ended. Lunge. Omega lunged with all of his leftover strength. Stab. Finally, Omega's fangs bit and stabbed deep inside Drigger's neck, and before the enemy could even whimper or bellow in agony, Omega ripped out Drigger's entire head. A spray of violet blood akin to a tall waterfall spread on the battlefield. Drigger's body dropped on the ground while the detached head in the killer's mouth had a horrid expression. The law of the jungle respected only the strongest. It didn't matter if it was a lion or a wolf. The one with absolute might would rule over all things in creation. Omega threw Drigger's head on the ground while his bleeding figure put both forelegs on the massive body of the enemy. Even in this gravely injured state, his appearance was no different than a supreme being who stood at the top of the food chain. Omega raised his head and howled the loudest he had so far ever since he was created, sending shockwaves in the battlefield while his voice resounding in a 20 kilometers radius as if an earthly calamity had struck and the heavens were angry. His figure still had the aura of supremacy and sovereignty. The battle between two tyrants had ended. The one who emerged didn't just become the strongest of the two, but rather, this fierce battle was a birth of an overlord. The Battle of Titans finally ended and Omega emerged as the final victor, asserting his dominance over the ginormous corpse of the fallen enemy. Even with the bleeding figure and mauled legs, he still stood firm like a supreme overlord. Swoosh! Khan and Ronan in their Legolas and Scorpion appearance came close to the now barely recognizable battlefield while their doppelgangers still guarded the borders, allowing no one to enter in the 40 kilometers of radius. Wheeze! The Hrodvitner subordinate was breathing heavily and finally, he transformed into his human form again. Two broken arms with a lot of flesh missing, face and chest full of claw marks while both the legs were lacerating heavily. Ronan quickly supported Omega and Khan used whatever makeshift healing skills he had. Unlike Khan and Blackwell, Omega didn't have rapid regeneration skill and given his identity as a variant mythical monster, even the high-grade healing and vitality potions wouldn't be effective. Thus, both of them assisted Omega in whatever way they could since Armin wasn't here. "I'm fine. I just need some time to heal," said Omega, his natural regeneration abilities of Fenrir working even faster than the healing spells from Khan. Just then, one of the doppelgangers showed the sight that the Count's forces were trying to come here and the Legolas present at that part of the border was deterring them from entering, saying that the battle wasn't finished yet. "This one was very strong despite not being at mythical rank," spoke Omega, his victorious smile revealing his satisfaction. Khan then nodded and used attraction to pull out its massive 5-meter-tall golden core from its chest. "This is your reward. You earned it." He spoke and gave an understanding gaze. Omega then used the energy plunderer skill and the black hole quickly absorbed it. Soon, the world energy inside the core started diffusing inside Omega's body and his situation became stable as this source of mana and world energy also rose his regeneration ability by many folds. Khan then looked at the corpse and gave a command. "Absorb." 2 hours later, Khan was done absorbing Drigger's abilities without even touching the corpse thanks to the newly evolved ability absorption divine ability. "Damn it! None of the abilities are helpful to me or anyone in our group," spoke Khan with a dejected expression. The abilities he got heavily depended upon the size of the user since the accumulation of sound and vibration waves needed to be done inside the user's body and their throat needed to be built up in a way it would facilitate using that sonic roar skill. Khan was only a 6 feet human and currently an elf. Unless he was as big as Drigger or Omega and his lungs were at least a few hundred meters wide like these two ginormous monsters, the skill wouldn't work. The only way he'd ever be able to use it is if he transformed into a titan like Blackwell. But currently, even Khan's Titan transformation skill allowed him only to be 60 meters tall at best. "Never mind. Let's leave it for the future," he said, and all three of their figures then headed in a particular direction. Scorpion and Raiden appeared in front of the Count and their forces while Legolas used Shadow Swap to take his doppelganger's place without anyone noticing anything. Count Horik and his son were too stunned to speak and gasped in disbelief after seeing Raiden's sorry state, which looked like he wouldn't make it. "What happened there? We could hear all those battle noises even from here," said the old and long-bearded exalted noble. "It's done. But our guy got injured. He's recuperating and needs rest. We need to go back to our guild quickly to heal him properly," said Legolas in a hurry. To see that even a third-stage saint like Raiden was wounded so severely and gasping for air, the Count and his son could only imagine how terrifying the battle must have been. Their forces never managed to enter 10-kilometer radius even from the air, but Raiden had not only done so but also killed the legendary rank creature. Just then, Legolas spoke with a disdainful look. "You're lucky that it was us. Other guilds would have charged you 50 million for just killing that one monster," he said in a slightly angered tone. But the Count and his son could not speak a word against his tone, as they were the ones at fault since they didn't provide any prior information as the clients. "We're grateful to you, sir," responded the old noble in an apologetic tone. This time, the noble didn't address Legolas as Mr. or guild leader, but as Sir, showcasing his thankfulness and also guilt. The agreement they had before didn't mention additional benefits apart from the cores of the legendary rank creatures. Still, the Count felt like they had wrongfully taken advantage of the Misthios Guild. Hence, he called Legolas as Sir, revealing his willfulness to form a good connection with the former. "I hope you don't forget this, Lord Horik. Maybe one day, you could introduce me to your friends from the close circle who are in similar situations as you," spoke Legolas, showing no restraint in his demanding tone as he requested the noble to do him a favor. Finally, after an hour, Legolas and the group received the payment and left using a flying ship provided by the Count. As the night came, they reached their headquarters and Omega was moved to a medical care room where Armin took the lead to heal him. "Master, I need to go there," he said to Khan. He had absorbed Drigger's core and now was the best time to make the qualitative rise in strength and levels. Khan nodded and summoned the Tablet of Arcana, and Omega entered inside to use the Chamber of Exaltation where Rathnar was to guide Omega on how to use it. At the same moment inside the exalted noble's territory, all the bodies of the massive creatures were brought to their headquarters for salvaging. As for Drigger's mountainous body that couldn't be moved, the Count sent a few thousand experts to harvest it properly. After looking at how big the monster was, the Count and his sons felt like they had survived the biggest trial of their lives. This was going to be a good haul, and the majority of their expenses and losses they incurred till this point would be recovered just from selling the bodies and parts. Just then, the eldest son spoke. "Was that elf a fool? Why didn't he try to ask for more money or take some share in the profits from these bodies? Why give all of them to us?" "Fool, you say? That elf is a visionary individual. He knowingly took such a big loss and made us owe him greatly. With these resources, we will be able to stand back at our feet again. All of the credit goes solely to the Misthios Guild for it. Do you think the debt we have to repay will be small?" he said with a sarcastic voice. "You mean he purposely gave the bodies to us and only took the cores with a hidden intention?" asked the youngest son. "Yes. Not only we're greatly indebted to him, I'm certain all those people who were watching from other noble houses, the ones who led these monsters in our domain, would also receive the information soon about how the Misthios Guild killed all 4 of the legendary monsters. Soon, the guild itself will become very famous not only in our region but the top players and noble classes, whether they're from our side or the rival factions. The other noble houses might as well try to establish a friendship with them, seeing their capabilities," revealed Count Horik. He was a nobleman and a businessman possessing deep knowledge and experience in both sectors for decades. Others may not see the future implications, but he was an expert who could foresee how things were going to turn out. "Remember, no matter what, we must get close to this Misthios Guild. Establishing deep ties with them and their guild leader should be our top priority," commended the old noble. "But why? Aren't they just a hired force?" queried the eldest son. "You damn idiot. This was just one of their saints who fought and killed all those monsters by himself. And they have a total of 8 saints in their guild," he rebuked with an exasperated voice. "Imagine what they could do in a battle if we hire them as our main force. Unless someone hires the top guild of Alfheim, there's nobody else who can match their strength," he declared in a somber voice. Both the sons were surprised, but soon they understood the truth behind it all. "You're right, Lord Father," spoke the youngest son. Although Khan had given up on many benefits and should have charged them a lot of extra money for the job, the intentional losses he made didn't go in vain, because now this opened a path for him and the Misthios Guild to become a super force. On the following day, Khan again met Logan in the Mercenary Association, sitting comfortably in his office as Legolas Ragnarsson. The expression on his face was cheerful and anticipating while he faced the brown-furred wolfkin on the opposite side of the desk. "Do you have it?" he asked in a soft tone. "Yes," Logan replied without showing any expression and took out a blue and gradient diary from his space ring. "Soon, I will be demoted to my original position. They've already found a replacement. Spoke the wolfkin in a helpless tone. See, I told you. Just 10 days and they already made arrangements. No matter who it is, they're most likely to be from the close circle of the high elven noble class. You'd be going back to do all the work for the next person that sits in your current chair. Taunted Legolas playfully. Yeah. Thankfully, you told me where to look and what to look for, so I barely managed to complete the list in time. I've investigated everything that was to know about it, replied the interim COE of the association. Now, it's ours for the taking. He spoke with an elated expression as a surge of joy spread over his mind. The list Logan had created was the affiliated guilds and people his predecessor, aka the Fat High Noble Elf, had made during his time when he was in the position of authority. It also contained much information about high-end clients throughout Alfheim, their respective trades, and businesses that required the mercenary work that the Fat Elf dealt with and brought the client and the guilds together for. Most of these deals in the list were unofficial and were done under the table. The predecessor had done a good job of hiding them by showing them as marginalized contracts or small payment deals. Most of the clients probably never even knew that the 5% cut they paid for the legal charges for the association. Not a single dime of it went to the mercenary association but to the elf nobles' own pockets. As for how did Khan know this to be the case, how to hide these transactions in plain sight and where to look for them? Because that's exactly what Khan would have done if he were in the elf's shoes. Logan was moved by his future prospectus, and Khan needed an inside man for the job. Thus, the Wolfkin gathered all the secrets right through the official channels and saved Khan a lot of trouble. Now that the elf lost his position, he no longer had the authority or say in officiating any of the deals and contracts. He had become a useless party for both sides and now was expendable. The high elf was a tiger without teeth and claws, unable even to kill a boar. Soon, the clients would look for someone who'd do the job for them while saving some money in due process, and the mercenary guilds would look for someone in authority whom they could make ties with and get the best and highest-paying jobs easily. Once the new elf came, they'd approach him since he'd be the boss. And that's why Khan instructed Logan to find this information in the little time he had as the chief operating executive after they framed the elven official. As for the contents such as list of the clients and the guilds who had arrangements with the old COE, Khan had a simple plan. The system was still standing, however. Khan planned to use this inside information and already established infrastructure to do what he was now an expert at. And that was a hostile takeover. Meanwhile, at the same time in one of the territories surrounding Count Horik's domain, was a small base of operation. Although this base was small compared to the estate of Misthios guild headquarters, the number of people and ammunition stationed was already twice the number. Bang! Inside a bright and windy office, a redhead woman with blue eyes donning a blue, white and gray attire banged her fist on the desk while fuming with anger. This headquarter was actually a temporary residence of this second-stage saint and one of the outposts of a reputable force. Given the appearance of this tall yet devilishly beautiful redhead, one could tell that she was a powerful swords maiden. Commander Rose Hightower, all 4 clients are complaining and some are even asking to return half the payment. Reported a masked assassin in black clothes who had a dark yellow mask, hiding the entirety of his face. A strong breeze entered through the large window, fluttering the sword maiden's long hair and revealed her dark and gloomy countenance. Tell me everything in detail. How did it happen? She ordered in an annoyed voice. The assassin then started recounting how yesterday, all the legendary rank creatures surrounding Count Horik's domain were slaughtered. Damn it! We worked so hard to redirect those boss monsters from their dungeons to that region as per our agreement with all the clients. We even lost 500 warriors and a warship in our attempts, all because the payout was good. I was stationed here by the guildmaster to be the first force of response and maintain those monsters in that noble's territory. She iterated and exclaimed in anger, her countenance turning hateful. So who did it? Chasing away a legendary rank dungeon boss is achievable, but killing them and all 4 at that can be done only by a powerful force as good as ours. She asked. But to her query, the assassin rose only one finger. 1. It was done only by a single saint. He killed all 4 of them by himself without any external help or even assistance of warships. Stated the assassin in a gloomy voice and continued, "He's from a new guild in Alfheim. That person is a peak 3rd stage saint and is one of their commanders," he revealed in a helpless voice. But suddenly, the woman's expression turned aghast. "Damn it! My luck is so bad. I'll have to report this to the guildmaster quickly, lest she blames me for all the failures," she said, and activated an elven transmission artifact shaped similar to a green hibiscus flower. But while doing so, an emblem was revealed on her chest. A vertical sword above a spear and a scepter carved on a round shield. From both sides, there were 6 wings of feathers coming out as if an angel was getting ready to soar in the sky. This was the official emblem of the guild this second Saint Redhead belonged to. She was one of the commanders of 12 Valkyries. While Khan was getting ready to quickly act and execute his plans to become a super force in Alfheim after getting the inside information, the 12 Valkyries had their first encounter with the Misthios, where they took a big loss after how Omega killed all the legendary rank monsters himself. But unbeknownst to both these guilds, there were far greater and more important matters being discussed in the Imperial Hall situated at the center of Aletnal, the capital of Zivid Empire. A tranquil environment and soothing music played by various instruments exclusive to the elven culture that were hovering in the air while being played using magic. A scene of a long line of seats on various platforms was revealed, and on the top were 2 thrones. On these thrones, 2 golden brown-haired high elves who revealed the auras of powerful saints were conversing with each other. One belonged to the emperor while the other was occupied by the abbot of Zivid Empire. These 2 individuals looked to be in their late 50s, but their real age was unfathomable. A 7th stage summoner elf in brown and golden attire, having a book on his lap that contained the records of their religious doctrine, spoke to the next party. Merrill says in Salar Venric, the 7th stage summoner saint, also known as the abbot of Monastery of Life, spoke in a stern voice, "Brother, the time is coming closer. We will have to send the hero there." Nyeven Triskel in Salar Venric, the 8th stage saint magician donning black and golden robes, also known as the emperor of the Zivid Empire, responded to his younger brother, "The previous 2 heroes failed 600 years ago. The summoned hero and his entire party died there. Although I'm reluctant to send Ervelin, but he has the highest chance to achieve it," said the emperor with an anticipating voice. "Yes, even our great god Jivenimas helped us this time after we proposed this arrangement before the summoning ritual. That's why he chose Ervelin, given his own powers and history in his previous world. After coming to our world, he became a 4th stage saint in just 5 years. His bloodline and inborn talent can't even be compared by high elves despite him being a half-breed," spoke the abbot with a pleased and proud countenance. "If Ervelin managed to control that thing in Alfheim, he will be able to not only kill the demon god but will help us overturn the hierarchy of the species, making us high elves as the most supreme race. And if he becomes a demigod, even the elder dragon and the archangels won't be able to stop us. In the future, elves shall rule this world," said the elven emperor enthusiastically. "We would have turned victorious long ago if that place didn't have the restriction of a 5th stage saint," he revealed. "Do not worry, brother. Our god chose Ervelin's divine abilities himself. Even the demon god won't be able to kill him unless he becomes a demigod rank, being first. But given our hero's talent and bloodline, he will become such a being within just 20 years. Gloated the abbot. The talks between 2 of the strongest individuals continued in a merry tone. But suddenly the conversation took a grim turn. "What about my son? Hasn't he been found yet?" queried the emperor. "We even sent our spies to Rakos, Vulcan, and the Amzur Empire. And yet, there was no trace of him," spoke the abbot. This was something they were investigating privately, and no one, including the closest confidants of the emperor, knew about this matter. "I think we should stop now. He is most likely dead," said the abbot reluctantly. "No, younger brother. We need to keep searching. Both you nor I don't have more than 50 years to live now. You chose the vow to not marry or have children to serve our God as his spokesman, while I could produce only 2 heirs. Given our current situation, Finding my son is of utmost priority no matter how long it takes. Spoke the emperor in a dejected tone. We need him to become the emperor and my daughter to become the abbess. But to these words the abbot quickly refuted. I cannot approve of it. We both know about her. She's tainted. He spoke, suppressing his rage. Brother, we have no choice. We lived for more than 600 years and our lifespan is at its limits unless we both miraculously break through to the next rank before our deaths. But if the worst was to come, we need to at least place our family in these two positions or else there will be a war and our Elven Emperor class might get usurped by the Elven High Kings class. We both will go down as the biggest jokes in our ancestry if that happens. Revealed the Emperor as he sighed helplessly. Then not her. How about we wed her to Ervelyn and make their firstborn as the contender for my position? That child can be groomed from a young age and we will maintain our hegemony as well. Proposed the abbot. Agreed. This is a better alternative. As long as our family name continues, then it's all worth the sacrifices. Spoke the emperor. Soon, the topic of their conversation shifted to another grave matter. What about the hero of darkness? Queried the abbot this time. Since I last heard, they found his trace and are looking in nearby empires of the Vulcan Empire. They can't enter the Rocco's Empire or the No Man's Land anyway, so it's good news that they traced him to other empires. It's only a matter of time before he's caught. Revealed the emperor. Then what about his divine keys? The Vulcan Empire can no longer use them since their pope and hero are dead. Questioned the old elf. The matter will be decided during the conclave of heroes when he's caught. Till then, we also have to be vigilant. We must protect Ervelyn at all cost. Replied the emperor. Well, it's not like anyone can kill Ervelyn anyway. Spoke the abbot confidently. To his reply, the emperor also laughed off as he declared vehemently. All in all, he is going to save this world. In a vastly spread settlement across a seashore on the eastern end of Alfheim, a scene of hundreds of massive ships docked on this 15 kilometers wide harbor came into sight. At the main control headquarters was a meeting going on between the head of this widespread settlement, which was also a transportation and fishing enterprise. The individual across the table was an elf in black and blue long coat attire. Legolas Ragnarsson. The elf with white hair and red eyes gave a sympathizing look to the black man with short and curly hair, dressed in the gray and red coat of a businessman. Denzel Harrington was the head of a big shipping and fishmonger enterprise and established himself as one of the biggest players in this sector who also controlled a part of the economy. The tales of this man were extremely inspiring to many as he started this company while being only a son of a fisherman and also greatly provided jobs and economic stability to the native community as he thrived along the way. Damn it! I knew something was off, cursed the man, fuming with rage and hatred. On this table were a few official documents that looked exactly the same, but one differing factor was seen in them: the amount of money. These were the official contracts from his side and also the records registered in the Mercenary Association of Alfheim. The contract was an annual deal of security service provided by the LNP Guild, the second strongest guild of Alfheim. You're not the only one, Mr. Harrington. Others were also scammed by him. Here, you paid 20 million Idikar when the actual cost should have been just 16. Not only did the LNP Guild get 2 million extra for the annual contract for providing security for your shipments and the helicarriers, but the High Elf also ransacked 2 million into his own pockets. Spoke Legolas in a calm tone as he rested his chin on the left palm. How did you get it? Queried Denzel, who was 35 years old. You could say I stumbled upon it by accident, joked Legolas. But I do have a proposition myself, said the Elf Guild leader. Mr. Ragnarsson, although I'm thankful for bringing this to my attention, I'm not in the mood of trusting another elf at this point. Spoke the short-haired black man. I'm not saying you should trust me. I brought these to you to simply let you know the truth. At least now you know who your friends and enemies are, said Legolas in a friendly tone. Legolas then told the man about their modus operandi in making deals for mercenary commissions and arrangement of half payment in cash and the rest in SS rank cores. And what are you getting out of it? This is a losing deal for you, skeptically queried Denzel. I don't know. If this conversation goes in the right direction, maybe your long-term business? Laughed Legolas in a nonchalant manner. However, Denzel's expression revealed his upset mood. He had just found out that his trusted person in the Mercenary Association, who he had developed a close relationship with over the years, had been ripping him off by such a high margin. Naturally, he would be distrustful of anyone who even offered a helping hand at this moment. Think about it. Not only we're offering you a great deal, but we're also currently the second strongest guild in Alfheim and nearby 500 kilometers. I'll be honest. We need the work to establish ourselves in our profession, and you need effective people while cutting the cost. This way, you could not only save money but also recover the losses you've had in the past few years. I'm willing to take the loss on my side as long as you agree to my terms. We can even sign a lifespan contract for it, proposed Legolas in a confident voice as he lightly smiled. And why should I believe that you'll hold your side of the deal? Asked Denzel in a grim voice. You don't have to, but know this for sure. I got this information because the High Elf who scammed you was overthrown and someone else took his position temporarily to find out about this. What do you think will happen when another High Elf sits in that position? Do you think their treatment of you would be any favorable? Questioned the elf in a taunting manner. Both of us already know the High Elves are much more prideful and merciless than an Ironborn elf like me, who comes at the bottom of all elven classes in our empire. As for what happened and how you were ripped off, the Mercenary Association will not do anything because the president is the uncle of the guilty party. Even if you go to the imperial authorities and sue the High Noble Elf, they will not even let your case stand in the imperial court on the accords of illegally obtained evidence being inadmissible. He is bound to walk away with your money and not even get a single day's jail time for conning you and your entire corporation of millions of hard-working people for the past 5 years. So who better as a choice than the guy who needs you as much as you need them? Iterated Legolas carefully as he laid down his cards in front of the man. Denzel gave it a thought for a while and then spoke in an exasperated tone. Do you know why I still travel and do my business using seas and rivers throughout the Empire? Isn't it obvious? Because warships, although they're fast and reliable, there's a limit to how much goods you can carry on them, and there is also the requirements of hundreds of thousands of rank cores just for one long voyage. Responded Legolas. Khan himself was a professional businessman in this life. He understood Denzel's position more than anyone else. Correct. And that's why we use the sea. It's cheaper and also the maintenance cost is affordable even if it takes time for the shipping. He explained. Legolas also nodded in agreement. Is there anyone who can protect my crew and goods? Queried Denzel. I have a guy. If he's protecting your envoy, whether it's the sky or the sea, no one can harm them, spoke Legolas. He then told Denzel about a certain commander of his and offered a few more enticing terms. Fine then, Mr. Ragnarsson. I'm hoping that at least you won't stab me in the back. My contract with LNP is expiring next week. I will send my people and the official agreement via the association to set up a new contract on terms we discussed now, said Denzel. This was also an opportunity he wouldn't get anywhere else. Both shook hands, making a verbal pact on the spot. This way, Khan had secured one of the biggest enterprise in Alfheim as a long-term client. For the next 2 weeks, Khan was using the information provided by Logan in the Blue Diary to the fullest. It had contracts, details, clients, and the guild. The copies these people had been falsified and many people were ripped off by the fat high elf. Knowledge is power. Khan was using it to simply poach these clients in broad daylight. And with proof in hand, everyone was enraged after knowing that they were fooled big time. Not a single one of the big leaders of these enterprises had a good countenance. But even so, what could they do? What happened to Denzel was the same case for them. Given the social structure, nothing would happen to the thief while they suffered immense losses. With this same tactic of approaching these big names, Khan reeled in 23 major corporations and clients, and only 4 decided to refute him. To him, this result was far better than expected. Not everyone knew about their guild and had heard about many accomplishments other than them having 8 saints. In the end, rank was still a factor. Both 12 Valkyries and LNP had a 4th stage saint individual as their leader, while Legolas was only 2nd stage saint. And the strongest person was Omega, who was a 3rd stage saint. But even in the first 2 guilds, a 3rd stage saint was only worthy to become the vice president at best. Thus, some took a stance of testing the waters despite seeing the great benefits of the deal. Khan, on the other end, wasn't worried in the slightest. Why? Although he lacked the manpower and was new in the business, once their success rate spoke for itself, it will be these very leaders coming to his office one day to propose the deals. One needed to be able to accept losses and take a retreat in the business world before they created a strong customer base. Like how people offered lower tariffs on call rates and internet data packs at the beginning years of their telecommunications companies while receiving losses in abundance. But once the consumer base rose immensely, they charged as much as everyone else, sometimes even higher. And by that time, when the customers were hooked and reliant on their service, even with these hikes in price, at least 70 to 80% would stay. The risen price would not only make up for the losses of gone customers, but would also gradually compensate for the losses you had at the beginning days of the company. All it took was patience and futuristic planning. Not many had the guts to stay the course, and thus, not many became rich by accumulating wealth over the course of time. Khan held this book like a warhead in his hands now. His ambitious goals were no longer far from reality, and soon, he'd dominate the mercenary profession. Khan sat in his office as he reveled in his recent silent victories. The clients he poached were going to officially start their deal in the upcoming weeks while ditching their old contracted guilds after learning the truth about how they were being scammed till this point. And there's nothing the Mercenary Association or those guilds could do about it. Thus, Khan used the truth as his sword to slay the competition without shedding a single drop of blood. As far as the ire of those said guilds went, Khan and the company were already experienced enough to deal with such matters during their days as a weapon manufacturing company in Rathna and his time as sovereign of Verlassen. The most decisive factor was always strength. The one with the biggest fist was righteous and honest, while the weak were evil and treacherous. This was how things worked in this world. Khan had Ronin already investigate the people they were going to steal the business from, and thus he approached the clients based on whom they can afford to offend. Other than the reputable 12 Valkyries Guild, none could stand toe-to-toe against them. And if anyone tried to harm their guild members or the saint, Khan intended to leak the information about how they dealt with the LNP Guild. This would be a warning that most could not dare to test if it was true or not. All of this was achieved in just 1 month, while others would have taken years or maybe even a decade to accomplish. And this was how Khan reached the final stages to establish themselves so quickly that even their possible rivals wouldn't get a chance to react. 3 days later, an envoy of a powerful tribe arrived at the main headquarters, escorted by 1,000 soldiers and luxurious carriages. Over a dozen people walked out of these carriages, and soon, the numerous servants carrying yellow banners with a rising sun behind a mountain etched into them stood on both sides as the hooded figures walked slowly in a straight line. On the receiving side, Legolas and Dante stood at the front as hosts and escorted this group of guests in gray and golden robes to the main meeting room. Finally, after everything settled and the mood for the meeting was set, the important discussion began. The leader of this group and the people behind him finally revealed their faces. The species these guests belonged to was called Luck-Ion, a physical appearance matching with humans but having completely white eyes with no iris in them. The entire body of these Luck-Ions was made of dark gray metal. Their kind had tall stature, every member being at least 2 meters in height, while their slender but strong bodies moved slowly compared to normal humans. Khan had learned about this species during his information-gathering days about the Zivit Empire. In the social hierarchy, Luck-Ions stood at the 4th spot, below only elves, humans, and demi-humans. Unlike the 3 species, their bodies were made of solid metal and their eyes were no different than white glass. Even the silver hair of these beings were as hard as steel threads, and the entire species was greatly valued and treasured in the Elven Empire. In their stomach was a glowing purple orb, as if it was an inbuilt lantern in their bodies. Although they lacked speed and weren't adept in practicing mana, having the least amount of saints in their species, all Luck-Ions were extremely strong ever since birth because of their bodies. If a newborn Lucayon infant was shot in the head, the bullet wouldn't even scratch their skin. This was the reason nobody dared to make an enmity of this species. In the Elven Empire, the elves were only prominent in magic and fighting classes because of their natural affinity with mana and world energy. They also excelled in artificing. Humans were jack of all trades, but they never had any specialty. Demi-humans also had advantages, but they also differed based on their respective species. But Lucayans were no different than dwarves of the Vulcan Empire. Why? Because in the Zivet Empire, all the arms, weapons, massive warships and tools were made by the Lucayans. This species had inborn control and affinity with metals and ores. Coupled with their immense strength, they overwhelmingly ruled the smithing and forging trade in this empire. Khan had learned from the history books that Lucayans were actually descendants of a variant species birthed from humans and Bukla, the latter species being extinct at this point. Lucayan species evolved from time to time on their own in the past 10,000 years, and now they resemble humans. But still, they would not associate themselves with any other species and lived in their own tribes across the empire. I am Orion Greyborn, leader of the Greyborn tribe, introduced the leader himself. Even the voice of this individual sounded like rusted metal rods rubbing against each other. Legolas nodded in return and asked, "How may I be of service to your tribe?" "Sir Legolas, we are in need of your people's strength, especially from your saint commanders," spoke Orion and explained their situation. The Greyborn tribe owned a vast territory outside the southern-eastern side of Alfheim, their lands being full of ores and cores that were important in forging most of the high-quality weapons and armors. The Greyborn clan itself was one of the top 3 arms dealers in the 500 kilometers perimeter thanks to their species specialty. However, their lands had a misfortune. They were surrounded by 3 dungeons, among which one was a high-tier dungeon, the big one of their kind. Even the adventurers in that region had failed to conquer them ever since they were formed hundreds of years ago. But every year, due to dungeon outbreaks when the mana was overly saturated and the dungeon expelling all of its monsters to start anew, there were annual monster tides in their region. Given the large scale of this monster army, it was a type of battle that not many people could stand against even with numbers because the monsters had the territorial advantage. The loss of life has been great, and even many mercenary guilds no longer accepted the job because the losses greatly dwarfed the gains. "I see. Then you don't need many saints. We have one person who can defend your lands all by himself," declared the elf confidently. Legolas then summoned one of his commanders who was possibly the best in their group to complete this job. A tall 2-meter figure walked in, clad in brown armor and a massive battle-axe and a shield on his back. "This is Sigurd Sutinger," introduced Legolas proudly. This was finally the time for this subordinate who had been busy lately to complete his training in blacksmithing skills. The one to take charge of this task alone was none other than Blackwell, the Titan general. 2 days later, there was an army surrounding all 4 sides of a region that spanned 60 kilometers in total perimeter, filled with many mountains and mines at their foot, while being inhabited by over 100,000 people. Among this populace, at least 40% belonged to the same species as the clients that came to visit the Misthios Guild recently. This place was called Lucania, the home of the Lucayan species and the lands ruled by the Greyborn tribe. Swoom. Few flying ships passed over the air as people from Misthios Guild arrived. However, their entire envoy of 300 people only had one saint. TCH. The Misthios Guild leader is mocking us, it seems. Sending only one saint while others in the past couldn't even stop the monster tide with 3 saints, complained one of the members of the main council. The people who followed Orion Greyborn back then were all the members of the tribe council who appeared during their previous meeting. At least they accepted our request, while others declined it even after we begged them. Even the 12 Valkyries refused to accept this job, saying the pay wasn't enough for this level of battle. Refuted another council member who seemed much older than the former. No time to quarrel among ourselves. The guild leader boasted that this commander of his will be able to finish the task. If not, we don't have to pay them a single Idikar. It's not like we're losing out much. The only issue is protecting the lives of our people and our settlements that get decimated every year," spoke Orion in a somber voice. Thud. The flying ship descended and Sigurd's tall figure walked out. To the Luckians, he was a demi-human, a rank above them in the social hierarchy, so they all gave a respectful bow. "Let me investigate the terrain first, and I also want all the intel about entry points for the monster tide," spoke Sigurd aka Blackwell, and quickly disappeared. 1 hour later, a scenario akin to a war council came to be where Sigurd received the requested intel. So that's how it is. No wonder other guilds didn't accept this job. You have to fight on 4 fronts at the same time with at least 5,000 to 8,000 warriors while killing the monsters as well as guarding the people inside the settlements. "Why didn't you build a wall to protect your borders yet?" he iterated and asked. "We couldn't. The dungeons appeared only 9 years ago and most of the region has hundreds of deep mines. Excavation of ground to build walls would only cause landslides and the territory would be destroyed. If not for that issue, we would have built a wall already," responded Orion. "I see. Then I have a proposition," spoke Sigurd in a stern voice, his confident and domineering gaze landing on all the Luckians in the room. He then proposed them a method, but all the listeners only had their eyes and mouths wide open. "Impossible! If you can do that, I swear in my tribe's name that we will pay your guild triple the amount," declared Orion Greyborn. "Ha ha! Just make sure that no one is in those regions and nobody bothers me during my work. I'll be done by tomorrow morning and we will be ready for the monster tide," declared Sigurd nonchalantly and left the building. His figure soon disappeared as he headed to work on the deal he just made. As for the Luckians going back on their word, he wasn't worried in the slightest because he was a saint in their eyes, more than capable enough to destroy their entire territory if they did not hold the end of the deal. The next morning, the leaders and all the people inside Lucania had a look of disbelief, everyone gossiping about the same thing. Out of nowhere and without even making any noticeable noises or damage to their lands, the entirety of the 60 kilometers of the region now had 50 meters tall walls surrounding the territory from all sides. And on top of it, these walls were made out of hard metal, minerals, and ores that were extremely hard to combine. Even if the entire Greyborn tribe had invested their time in building such walls surrounding their lands, it would have taken them at least a couple of years, and not to mention the manufacturing costs and other expenses. "How? When?" asked Orion to his people. "He did it all in the dark of the night. Not only that, there are deep pits surrounding the walls outside, and our experts found that those pits are filled with thousands of spikes made from solid rocks. If a monster tide comes, forget climbing the wall. Most of them would not even be able to cross the pits themselves. The entire Lucania is now an impregnable fortress," reported the head of intel from the tribe council. Swoosh! Just then, Sigurd appeared in front of their group. He didn't explain how he did it, but the actions spoke for themselves. What they didn't know was that Blackwell had used Earth Sense skill to check the terrain and chose which places he could extract the minerals and ores from. Then he used terrain manipulation skill to create these massive walls. And finally, he used mineral transmutation skill to change them entirely into solid metallic walls that could also be used as a place to monitor the borders like a watchtower. The deep pits, all of which were more than 5 meters in width alone, were actually where he took the source material for the construction from, and the spikes were there to kill the monsters that fell in them. Blackwell was a variant primordial titan with earth elemental affinity. This made every land and battlefield made with the solid ground as his own territory, even though he didn't have a domain of his own like Omega, Jugram, and Oliver. So contrary to how the story went where the Titans destroyed the wall, he created one by himself. The Luckians had an expression full of bewilderment. Forget the triple amount they had to pay. Most were amazed by how profound Blackwell's control over the earth element and metals was. Luckians were the species with the highest affinity with earth and metals in Zivit Empire, yet there was a being whose accomplishments were far greater than even their ancestors. At this moment, as if having a deep sense of inkling towards the Saint Tank warrior in front of them, all of them instantly knelt on their knees and spoke in a worshipping tone. "Thank you, Lord Sigurd." At this moment, an unexpected occurrence came to be as all the Luckians, including the tribe leader, suddenly knelt in front of Blackwell in his Sigurd form after getting a look at his deeds and accomplishments overnight. What they vehemently worshipped at this moment wasn't the Abyss Knight General, but his skills and affinity to both earth element and metals while addressing him as Lord. My eyes have been opened. I never thought someone could be superior to our race in perfecting the earth element to this degree. Even the powerful saints of our kin never managed to achieve such control in the past 10,000 years," said Orion in a respectful tone. Others behind him also nodded in agreement. "All right, there's no need to get so overwhelmed. The monster tide would arrive soon as per your estimations. So let me prepare beforehand," spoke Sigurd in a rustic voice. On the surface, he seemed humble, but inside, "Ha! You have good eyes, people of the Luck-Ion species. I am a being of an unparalleled primordial bloodline. How could I be compared to your mere race? Just wait till I find other titans and absorb their bloodlines. None shall dare to look down upon me then," thought the general without revealing any hubris or arrogance on his face. In reality, his confidence and self-praise weren't undeserved. Even when compared to other saints who practiced the earth element, Blackwell was leagues above them. Just that he rarely had the chance to showcase his skills and supremacy. As for going overboard and doing more than necessary, such as creating the protective wall for the Luck-Ion clients, he wasn't so stupid. All of it was done under Khan's orders before he even arrived here. The Luck-Ion tribe was one of the special species in the Empire, and their guild needed an extraordinary deep relationship with them for future purposes and goals Khan had planned. So when it came to making a first impression, Blackwell had knocked it out of the park. At noon, the surrounding region outside of Lucania started trembling as a stampede of a monstrous army started going awry. Just as they estimated, the dungeons had started throwing out all the inhabitant monsters outside because of the oversaturation of mana inside. The only relief people of Lucania had was that the dungeons didn't expel the dungeon bosses with them. Otherwise, there would be nothing but a brutal massacre. The guild members of the Misthios Guild were stationed at the top of the walls in batches across all 4 points of entry. And since Blackwell hadn't even left an entry point while creating these walls, none could even breach them. Yet, the issue here wasn't the rank but the overwhelming numbers of the rabid monster army. As they marched towards the local citizens, some monsters were already out of control and started attacking their fellow monsters. There was no leader in this army, so they had no order and only followed their instincts. But because of this, the weaker monsters ran towards the walls after smelling living beings. Sigurd floated in the air while the Misthios Guild member teams were tasked with informing him if a strong monster that could damage the walls appeared. But nobody here knew that Blackwell had a separate set of instructions from Khan. While making these walls, he had purposely made some parts hollow from the inside. Although they looked impenetrable, Lord rank monsters had enough physical strength to break past these walls. However, they were extremely rare, and even at best, there'd be only 4 Lord rank monsters and 2 High Lords at best. This way, there was still leeway for an attack, and thus, the Luck-Ion tribe would still be needing them in the future. Soon, the numbers of this monster army rose to a few 100,000 in just half an hour and surrounded the perimeter of Lucania from all directions. On top of it, this was just the first wave. "I guess it's time for me to act," spoke Sigurd in a thoughtful voice, revealing a prideful expression. Soon, he appeared at the north entry point of the monster wave. Various kinds of monsters that he had never seen before, which were exclusive and native to the dungeons in these regions, roamed and rampantly destroyed everything that came in their way. In just this one entry point, more than 30,000 giant monsters had amassed, and many of the flying monsters were being attacked by the Greyborn tribe's own forces. The main task for Blackwell here wasn't to massacre these monsters but to defend the people. Yet, he had different plans of his own. "Lord Sigurd, we will be relying on you," spoke one of the Luck-Ion council members who was stationed in this area and flew on a flying ship. Sigurd nodded, and soon he waved his hand. Just when the entry point was overwhelmingly crowded and the stampeding monsters full of bloodlust were crashing into the walls while thousands had already fallen into the deep pitfalls, crack! The nearby 3 kilometers of ground that these monsters were running on suddenly started cracking as hundreds of cracks and crevices suddenly formed. Thud! Right before everyone flying in the sky, an unexpected scene occurred, because at this moment, the entire battlefield had turned into a ginormous 3 kilometers wide pitfall, Blackwell hadn't been sitting idly since the morning. Without letting anyone find out, he had been changing the entire perimeter of Lucania, making a battlefield suitable enough for him to deal with this innumerable army of monsters in a single go. Inside these were millions of pikes made of sharp edges and hard stone. The majority of the monsters who fell inside were instantly killed before they even got the chance to adjust their footing. Blood and flesh filled this deep pitfall as more and more monsters kept falling and dying with no exception. Even those who landed on the bodies of others were soon crushed under those who fell upon them. There was no room for escape in any way. While everyone was gobsmacked after looking at Sigurd's immaculately planned battlefield, the saint had smirked devilishly, because this was just the first phase of his plans. And now, it was time for Blackwell to mete out his final judgment. A slow and painful death. A scenario of an absolutely ruthless massacre was in front of everyone, whether they were stationed on the wall or in the flying ships. Just with a single wave of his hand, Blackwell aka Sigurd had given a death sentence to more than 20,000 monsters at once, as the 3 kilometers region had become nothing but a pitfall of death. Even the Lucayan tribe council member stationed was speechless and couldn't help but be stunned. This was a simple but unattainable battle tactic to even their race. What kind of monster is this person? Even a first-stage saint of my species can affect only 1 kilometer of ground and change the terrain after great effort. Yet he completely reformed the terrain of 3 kilometers with just a simple wave of his hand. Powerful. He's simply too powerful, thought the middle-aged Lucayan with a slim build. But soon, his expression turned stiff and even he felt a chill in his spine. He gazed at the battlefield below and saw the bellowing monsters howling, grumbling and roaring as they fell on the sharp spikes and got mortally wounded. Many of the massive monsters started wailing as their bodies and heads were poked through. No ability was helpful because of this sudden destruction of the battlefield, and the majority were just like water balloons falling on a needle, their fate already sealed. With this move, Blackwell subjugated 90% of the monsters, the lucky ones running away due to their survival instinct. Even so, some lucky and powerful monsters did not die. They had defensive capabilities and physiques that saved their lives. However, this was just the first phase of his plans. Rumble. A rumbling echoed in the surroundings as Blackwell moved, and soon, some of the tall mountains and peaks in the nearby terrain started cracking on their own, as if an earthquake had shaken their entire being. Despite so, they weren't falling or breaking from below. Rather, most of them crackled and turned into thousands of boulders, being lifted high in the air by an invisible force. The saint then used his insurmountable pressure to pull down the flying monsters in the sky inside the pitfall. This was Blackwell using his saint pressure and terrain manipulation skill. 3 mountains were rooted out and restructured, turning into thousands of massive boulders, almost covering the entirety of the sky as they started moving together like cannonballs ready to be launched. Roar! Monster cries filled in the region again as the massive army of giant boulders floated right above this widespread and deep pitfall. As if doing the mic drop pose, Blackwell simply made a gesture, and soon, boom! Thousands of these incredibly heavy and hard boulders dropped like raindrops on the bodies of the pitiful monsters and crashed onto their bodies from above, instantly crashing them like a stone flattening a grape, the latter having no way to resist and getting turned into mush. Sigurd then looked around. His hands moved parallel to each other as he released his dark brown saint pressure and infused the earth elemental aura in between the gap of his palms. Soon, a massive brown orb formed that shimmered and revealed an incredibly oppressive pressure, as if Blackwell was summoning Kamehameha. Whoosh! Without wasting another moment, he shot the brown orb towards the pit like a cannon. Bang! However, instead of causing an explosion, the world energy in the orb instantly spread in the 3 kilometers wide region, and right before the monster tide could even react. Rumble! The nearby terrain started changing again. Most of the land and trees started cascading towards the pit and covering all the cracks and air gap between those massive boulders that fell before. Screams and roars filled the surrounding environment as the remaining monsters who luckily survived were now buried alive. This was no longer a battlefield, but a massive graveyard. Silence ensued, and everyone who saw the aftermath of this first wave of the attack was stupefied. Sigurd, on the other end, had a carefree expression. What would happen if all your enemies were buried underground? Alive? Did it matter if they had strong bodies or incredible strength? What if they couldn't even breathe? How would they even resist or struggle? What if they just suffocated to death while unable to move? What if their bodies were poked through by spears and stone projectiles while being crushed from above? What Blackwell did here wasn't just utilizing the terrain to his advantage. No, he turned it into a slaughterhouse. First, he created a big wall to attract and amass all the monsters of the enormous tide in a single spot. Then, he made the ground hollow from the inside and created spikes within while controlling the surface as the monster army marched upon it. And once most of them were gathered in the place of battle, they simply fell to death. Yet, this wasn't enough to completely eradicate the enemy force. So Blackwell used the soil to simply seal the deal, as thousands of monsters had no choice but to devotee their bodies and become fossil fuel for future generations of living beings. All right then, let's go to the other side, spoke Sigurd merrily and flew away to the other three sides. In an hour, he performed the same battle tactic and completely subjugated the monster on all fronts. There wasn't even a single casualty, or any of their soldiers had a scratch on their bodies. Not only did Sigurd single-handedly stop the monster tide, there wasn't even a drop of blood or a body on the ground except for extremely well-paved and flat grounds akin to a football field. At this point, all the soldiers of Lucania, the Lucayan tribe council members, and anyone who was in a position of authority or fought in this battle had seen how one saint alone killed more than 150,000 monsters without even drawing his weapon or the shield. Orion Greyborn was simply dumbfounded after witnessing the battle himself. If this person fought in an open battle against an army of soldiers, who can even face him on the ground? He will simply bury them alive before they even draw their weapons, he thought, his mind running wildly. Not only him but everyone present was truly impressed, because what Sigurd did was something no other guild had managed to achieve ever since these annual monster tides started 9 years ago. But all of them knew the deciding factor here. It's not that other saints of other guilds and their mercenary warriors were incapable. Just that they had the wrong approach towards the issue. They faced the enormous monster tide in a direct clash and lacked earth elemental abilities or had any incredibly astounding control of the terrain like Sigurd. Finally, the supposed second wave came, and their fate was no different. As for the Lord and High Lord rank monsters that appeared, Sigurd killed them with a single slash of his battle axe, showing his great might to the clients. After the tide was taken care of, all the inhabitants of Lucania came to learn of what transpired during the tide. Without suffering a single loss of life or having their homes destroyed this time, the doom was averted, and they all had only one person to thank for saving their lives. On this day, the Great Wall of Lucania came into existence, and Sigurd Sutinger of the Misthios Guild and their savior was now titled as Lord of Battlefield. The Greyborn tribe of Lucania was overwhelmingly grateful towards Blackwell, and after seeing how he easily defended their lands and swept away the entire battlefield, as well as provided long-term security to their terrain from the ground-level attacks and enemy breaches, the entire populace titled him as Lord of Battlefield. As expected, the higher-ups paid 3 times the promise payment, as well as SS rank corps according to their word, and also requested Blackwell to open several entrances in the wall that they'd use for the population to enter and exit. Given their specialty in crafting and smithing trade, they planned to invest in making ginormous gates that would be unreachable in the future. Blackwell in his Sigurd form showed a humble expression and used a respectful tone towards the council members, sometimes praising Legolas, aka their guild leader, who instructed him to protect the innocent inhabitants of these lands, even if it meant working more than what was expected of them. Because of this generosity, a form of verbal pact was formed with them and the entire tribe of 400,000 Lucaeans who specialized in weaponry and making flying ships in the entire Alfheim were now strongly allied with the Misthios Guild and also promised to give them preferential treatment in the future. What none of them knew that Khan had already predicted this to be the case when he accepted the job in the first place. Lucaean species had their position as 4th superior species in the Empire because of their innate abilities and bodies. Some saints of their kind even worked as forefront warriors in the military. But the case was that their numbers were very few and the reproduction rate was also low. Thus, they greatly emphasized the preservation of the lives of their people even though they had enormously strong bodies and couldn't be killed easily. This was something ingrained in their minds because of their customs. Thus, Khan specifically told Blackwell to go all out because sooner or later, he was going to need their help in upcoming plans. A grand celebration was held by the tribe and Sigurd was their honorary guest for the night. The next day, Blackwell told everything about what happened and how he tripled their gains in a triumphant tone. "Good. As expected of you. So did you bring them as well?" asked Khan with an anticipating voice. "Yes, of course," spoke Blackwell, and Khan activated his dimensional domain. As both entered inside the separate plane of dimension exclusive to Khan that now spanned for 10 kilometers in radius after Khan broke through to second stage Saint rank. He took out over 30 space rings and unloaded their contents. Whoosh! One after another, thousands of bodies of dead monster corpses varying from species to species and sizes spread and formed hundreds of small mountains in the entirety of the domain. Khan used Hunter domain and sensed the total numbers. Great. Close to 700,000 corpses, most of them in good condition. "This shall do," said Khan in an applauding voice and revealing an excited expression. All of these monsters were Blackwell's kills during the monster tide. What others didn't know was that when he dropped those massive boulders created from nearby mountains, he butchered only the ones on the surface and suspended them at a level in the air before using the ground and soil to bury them alive. After all the monsters died, he used those pointy and sharp stone pikes and turned them into pillars that supported the now hollow ground. This way, he had preserved many bodies while everyone thought that he turned them all into flat meat using his skills. Later, the assassins that Khan left in Blackwell's shadow secretly went into the hollowed ground when everyone was celebrating their victory against the monster tide. They all collected their corpses and came back to Blackwell without anyone noticing anything. The monster tide was also a great opportunity for harvesting monster corpses if one could successfully subdue them. And no way someone as shrewd and greedy as Khan would let this opportunity go. With this, we can sell most of their bodies and parts in the Adventurer Association or black market. As for the fully intact ones, they should serve the main purpose. He revealed as a grin formed on his face. "System, get to work," he ordered. In response, the system replied after a long time. Ability absorption activated. In just 1 hour, the absorption was done, and then when Khan moved to synthesis, he was sadly left disappointed. Although the numbers and abilities varied greatly, he couldn't create any saint rank or legendary rank skills and abilities. At the end of the day, these were only small mob monsters and not the dungeon bosses. "Alright then, I guess I'll have to focus on the main objective at hand," spoke Khan and then continued in a stern voice, "Awaken." 10 hours later, the synthesis divine ability finished its work, and now, other than the bodies Khan planned to sell, there stood an army of massive and ferocious monsters from different species, many being amalgamations of 2 to 3 different monsters. 200,000. These were the new members of the Legion. During the battle against Axel and his blood monster army, Khan understood one of his drawbacks. That, unlike Axel, who could recreate and increase a massive army of millions of fodder monsters, Khan severely lacked in that sector. Although he had powerful subordinates, but sometimes, the advantage of numbers, especially against a large enemy force, could not be overlooked. A powerful attack from a saint could easily raise the battlefield and turn it into a pool of blood, but most of those bodies would be beyond recognition, destroyed into small pieces. Thus, Khan had an inspiration from that incident. From now on, he'd target these monsters to keep increasing the numbers of the Legion army. Who knew if one day, he'd have to face an unending army or millions of monsters all at once, and even his legendary rank abilities didn't help during the battle of this scale. Then, he'd have to fight numbers with numbers. So it'd be a good thing if he had a bigger force. Added with the 150,000 Legion monsters I created in Verlassen during my time as the Sovereign. Now I have 350,000 subordinates in my own army who can always fight for me at a moment's notice. Out of them, 230,000 are pure monsters while the rest are fighting class subordinates with weapons and armors. Among them, I have 30,000 elite rank monsters. Close to 10,000 Lord rank monsters and only 2,000 High Lords. Man, only if I had some suitable monsters such as dungeon bosses, I could have created at least a dozen legendary rank monsters with the amount of SS rank cores and ores I have on hand. Spoke Khan with a dejected face. However, if any other saints of the Empire heard Khan, they'd choke on their saliva. What were legendary rank monsters? Those were the creatures that stood on par with saints and could easily kill an army of hundreds of thousands of soldiers on their own if a saint didn't interfere during the battle. Even the entire Zivit Empire barely had 80 legendary rank creatures spread in various sections and regions, each one being no different than a world calamity. Yet Khan was complaining that he didn't get a chance to create a dozen of them, as if they were sold in the farmer's market. Forget legendary rank monsters. Even one High Lord rank monster required at least 5 to 10,000 well-geared troops. In many middle-tier dungeons, High Lord monsters were often the dungeon bosses themselves. But Khan already had 2,000 High Lords in Legion. This was a feat that even a necromancer like Cyril hadn't accomplished yet despite having more than 10 million undeads in his army. TCH, I guess I'll have to kill a few dungeon bosses in the future and maybe I can create a few more reliable subordinates. He expressed with a countenance full of loss. All right then, I hope the last phase of the plans goes perfectly. After that, I will be completely set up in this empire. Spoke Khan. At midnight, inside a deep and forested mountainous range a few thousand kilometers away, a mysterious figure under green robes came out of a dark and humid cave that was protected by various barriers and formations. This tall humanoid being looked at the bright stars and 2 dazzling moons in the sky, basking in the tranquility of nature while taking a deep breath. I am finally awake after over 100 years. Spoke this person in a hoarse and grim voice. My rank has fallen to 5th stage saint now. Being a high elf surely takes a toll on one's mana and world energy. Still, I guess it's time for me to start making my move. That place, and that thing. It's about time everyone starts putting their chess pieces together. He spoke, his voice being icy cold and his eyes brimming with evil intentions. I shall depart for Alfheim. 1 month later, in the central region of Alfheim, a meeting was being conducted inside a grand manor where a heated discussion was going on in the big main hall that could hold over 1,000 guests at once. Despite the intricate, pristine architecture and refreshing decor of this hall, the topic of discussion had left all 26 individuals feeling despondent and agitated at the same time. A large round table was arranged at the center where the leaders among their respective groups were seated and representing their interests as well as arguing among themselves. The rest of their people stood behind them, varying in numbers for each leader. However, there were no normal people or even servants in this massive manor. The secrecy of this meeting was something no low-ranked or commoner individual would even dream about because all of these people present here were saints. At this moment, out of 31 saints in Alfheim that were in the mercenary business, 26 had gathered together. There was one common factor that brought all these people to this meeting, a threat that greatly affected them, the Misthios Guild. Bang! This cannot go on. Many of us have lost a lot of our clients and suffered too many losses. And all of that because of that crafty bastard Legolas Ragnarsson. An elf who appeared to be in his 40s spoke loudly, openly revealing the hatred filled in his eyes. However, no one dared to make any remark or even speak anything that could offend this person given his identity as a 4th stage saint. Sedaris Avarn, the elf in red and blue attire of a businessman, spoke with a vengeful voice. His identity was none other than the president of the LNP Guild. The one who tried to obstruct the procedure of the Misthios Guild coming into existence, and his machinations ended up in being the Misthios Guild sending him a message in the form of a detached head of their vice president as well as his friend named Ranobes. This cannot go on. Although my guild had suffered the least, but we can never be too cautious. Spoke a female warrior who sat beside Sedaris. But her standing and prestige in this meeting was no lesser than the former. Lager the Skjoldottir, the guild master of 12 Valkyries, had come with all of their saints as well. Behind her was a group of extremely strong, well-equipped and unusually attractive females. All of them were none other than the female saints of their guild titled as the Valkyries. Yet, despite their differing clothing, fighting classes, and demeanor, they stood in order, giving an oppressive aura that sent a subconscious message to not even look at them the wrong way. Should we target them? If all of our guilds create trouble and ostracize them in our community, it won't be hard to make them abandon their guild, spoke Sedaris. To his words, many of them nodded as this seemed like an effective way. Wishful thinking. The other side has the second highest number of saints in their guild now. Do you think it will be that easy? Asked Lager, her heavy and thunderous voice sending shivers down their bodies. Although she had a brutish demeanor, many already knew how insightful she was. Otherwise, the 12 Valkyries would not be the number 1 guild of Alfheim. Just then, Sedaris and everyone else had their eyes wide open. Then their expression turned solemn. They're here. Creak. The massive metal door to this meeting hall opened and silhouettes of many figures appeared. Step. 7 figures walked in with firm and loud steps. 2 of them being 2 meters in height while the rest were close to 6 feet tall. The new arrivals also did not bother hiding their auras and revealed their saint pressures without restraints. Sedaris revealed a scornful gaze as he spoke. The Misthios Guild. Khan in his Legolas personal, along with the 6 generals with their alternate identities as his commanders had also appeared with him leading the group. He was revealing his aura of a second-stage saint and others were only first-stage saints. Yet their numbers were only second to the 12 Valkyries. Rose Hightower, one of the Valkyries who was previously implicated in the matters of Lord Horik's territory and the legendary rank monsters, was also present with other Valkyries. She walked forth and whispered something in Lajertha's ears, who was seating on the chair. Just with Legolas and his commanders appearing, the atmosphere of the meeting hall instantly turned tense and grim. All of the saints revealed their discomfort and hate towards his group without hiding it. Legolas then walked close to the table, yet there was no chair left for him. "TCH, you all invited me here for a meeting, but there's no seat for me." He spoke in a discontent voice. The other leaders other than Lager revealed an uptight expression as if they felt some sense of superiority with this action. "Ah, so petty," spoke Legolas. Thud. But the next moment, he pulled out something from his space ring and placed it away from the round table. Unlike the rest, this wasn't a chair but a throne. Without showing any sense of shame or manners, Legolas sat on this black and golden tall throne with his legs folded. He then took out a cigar from his black and blue long coat and summoned a small flame on his forefinger, lighting it up and having no sense of fear or courtesy towards any of the saints as he started smoking it. "I heard all of you were talking shit about me." He spoke fearlessly and looked around the hall, having no sense of respect for anyone in this meeting. This conduct aroused the ire of many saints. Boom! The entire manor was then filled with intense killing intent as the leaders were offended so casually by the Ironborn Elf Guild leader. Boom! However, Legolas activated ward dominance and his black and red aura filled with sovereignty and bloodlust while his 6 commanders also revealed their highly murderous and oppressive aura, instantly repelling all of the auras revealed by the other side. Even 4th-stage saints like Sedaris and Lager were taken aback. Both could sense that Legolas was much powerful than he looked. Rumble. The entire manor started shaking because of these saint pressures and even the walls shook while the furniture vibrated continuously. Luckily, no normal individual below saint rank was here. Otherwise, they would have died. More like plastered on the floor already. Soon, some of the Saint Guild leaders who were oppressed and felt threatened by the auras from the Misthios Guild side started talking. A heated discussion filled with several complaints echoed in the hall. "What you did is immoral and beyond the ethics of the community," spoke Sedaris in a ghastly voice. "Bullshit. If that was the case, why isn't every guild leader of Alfheim present here? Only those who lost their clients to us are gathered in this meeting," rebuked Legolas as he kept smoking his cigar. "And what morals and ethics are you people talking about? If you hadn't made underhanded deals and scammed your own clients for money, I wouldn't have been able to reel them in to my side in the first place. So don't try to use this fake facade of righteousness in front of me. After all, said Legolas and continued in a stern voice. "There's no honor among thieves." The expression of all the leaders had turned aghast after Legolas spoke those words without hiding his thuggish conduct. But his words were indeed the truth that none of them openly wanted to admit. No criminal ever admitted to committing the crime when caught. These guild leaders were no different than the prestigious figures akin to people in high places of power. So no way would they openly admit ripping off their own clients for personal greed. Finally, the president of LNP spoke, unable to hide his hatred. "So what? Everyone looks after their interests. Yet you dared to steal from all of us. Aren't you afraid?" This time, he openly threatened Legolas as he revealed his enraged face, full of malice. "You're all surrounded by people who despise you, the people you offended by poaching clients. If we all banded together, not a single one of you will leave this place alive, and neither will anyone ever know about what happened here." He declared loudly, trying to make his rival fear by borrowing the name of other saints who also hated them equally. "There are 31 saints. You're only 7, more than 4 times your numbers. You think you stand a chance?" asked Lagertha, her gaze being stern but showing no interest in a skirmish. In a way, she was trying to gauge the elf on the other side of the table. "Oh, I wonder why I didn't bring up any backup then," spoke Legolas to himself. But the next moment, a sly grin appeared on his face. "Oh wait, I did." Boom! The entire manor shuddered and cracks formed on the walls while the ceiling started crumbling in some parts of the manor. Clang! Just then, another new entry arrived through the main door, giving an eerie aura while the intense bloodlust had basically frozen everyone from the rival side. A man with tall build and silver hair walked in. His bare-chested upper body and 2 katanas were the striking features. Omega aka Raiden Hrodvitson had appeared in this meeting hall. However, everyone present here, including the 2 strongest saints, were taken aback and surprised to their core because of the aura he revealed. A 4th stage saint. Suddenly, Raiden appeared in this meeting hall, and everyone was left speechless after he revealed his aura of a 4th stage saint. Khan's subordinates were a mixture of fighting-class humans and monster species, so replicating the aura of a saint was never an issue for them since all of them were hybrids anyway. Thus, everyone felt like a legit saint was standing in front of them. Raiden quietly walked and stood beside Legolas, who was grinning while smoking his cigar. "I love it when everything goes according to the plan," he said in a smug tone. "What do you mean?" asked Sedaris with a gloomy expression. "Did you all really think I would dare offend the entire mercenary community without having my own arrangements first? There is only one rule in this world," he iterated, his voice turning solemn in the following moment. "The strong always win while the weak can only allow themselves to be oppressed," he stated loudly. "History is written by victors. If you are the winner, you're righteous and virtuous. If you are the loser, then you're evil and treacherous." Legolas then gave a deathly stare to Sedaris in particular. "I already knew that one day, you all will band together to create trouble for me, but I don't have time to deal with these pesky skirmishes. I have but a simple rule," spoke Legolas, his voice resounding in the hall as he revealed. "I don't like to mess with innocent passers-by, but if you throw stones at my house, I'll throw a mountain at yours," he openly threatened. This time it was him being overbearing. His stern gaze filled with killing intent gave everyone a sense of dread. Everyone was under the impression that with their numbers, they could put a leash on the Misthios Guild and also make them compensate for the losses. But with a 4th stage saint in the form of Raiden, the tables had turned. The strongest members in this hall were 4th stage saints. Both were the undisputed leaders of their respective guilds. Yet now, there was another individual of the same strength. And on top of it, he was just a commander of the guild who stood besides the Ironborn elf like a loyal guard. "Humph. So what? There's only one 4th stage saint. And there are 2 of us," rebuked Sedaris. Lajertha's expression on the other end turned ugly. "This cunning elf. He's trying to use my name and reputation against the Misthios Guild, trying to sow discord between us. But if I back out now, My guild will lose face in front of everyone here, thought Lagertha with an indignant feeling. If this was before, it wouldn't have been a problem. But now, they have a fourth stage saint as well. Why would we make an enemy out of them just for few clients that won't come back to us anyway? Legolas still had a carefree expression as he replied. Oi! Do you think I'm here to play house with any of you? I'm simply taking this opportunity because you messed up from the start. It's not like none of you haven't done this to your competition before. So don't expect me to compensate your guilds a single dime. Besides, how many of you are willing to get killed just because President Sedaris here is provoking you? He openly said without hiding the mockery in his tone. Clink. Omega put both hands on the hilts of katanas, giving a deathly stare around the room. Everyone here was as hypocritical as one could be. And with Raiden being a fourth stage saint, 90% of the guilds and their saints lost the right to complain. If a fight broke out here, these people would be the first to die. Only Sedaris and Lagertha would have a chance to get out alive. Right now, although most of the saints were infuriated, they chose to shut up. Let me make things clear here first. We're done establishing ourselves, so there's no reason to cross paths with any of your guilds from now on. So let the bygones be bygones. He requested in a domineering tone. Now, who could rebuke him? Everyone here came to an understanding that finding trouble with the Misthios Guild was no longer an option. Rather, avoiding them like a plague would be in their best interests. Boom! However, the fourth stage elf was still hell-bent on stretching this matter. Don't think it's that easy, Ragnarsson, shouted Sedaris as he revealed his battle intent. Arsh, you're really dense, aren't you? You think I'd be so confident just because I have one strong guy? He asked with a coy grin. Lagertha's heart was filled with trepidation as if she sensed something wasn't right. Right in the very next moment, an ear-piercing shrill noise resounded in the surroundings, and a terrifyingly monstrous aura suddenly encapsulated the entire manor. Thud. Most of the saints, including majority of the leaders, were hit with insurmountable pressure that made their bodies drop on the ground and cave in without any forewarning. Sensing this aura, even Sedaris and Lagertha were gobsmacked because this was too big of a surprise. Don't tell me, spoke the elf president, and just then, a new figure who had completely hidden their existence till the point walked through the main door. A man with waist-length white hair, a body made of gray skin, having pitch-black eyes with yellow iris in them, revealed himself. This figure with an exposed upper body, having ripped build while adorning black pauldrons on his shoulders, had two wildly spread violet horns coming out of both sides of his head. Just like Raiden, this new arrival did not hide his aura in the slightest and revealed himself to be another fourth stage saint. The right arm of this being was covered in violet snake-like scales, while the hand was like a claw of a ferocious monster. Tongue. A black and yellow trident in his hands hit the ground with each step as a grim and stoic voice resounded in the entire hall. The hierarchy of power in this city is about to change, he openly declared. Next, he stood beside Legolas on the other side of the throne and asked, Guild leader, who do I have to kill here first? He spoke while looking at Sedaris and Lagertha with eyes full of murderous battle intent, a smirk visible on his face. Legolas then decided to do the introductions. Everyone, I would like you to meet the new commander who just joined our Misthios Guild, he said with a benign smile. This man let out a ruthless, domineering, and devilish grin as Legolas introduced his name to everyone. Rudra. It had been 2.5 months since Rudra ate Axel's body and was continuously processing his bloodline to use it as a catalyst in order to balance his basilisk and draconian bloodlines. Just over a week ago, he had finally succeeded in doing so and managed to take a human form for the first time since Khan created him inside the Abyss Forest. But under Khan's order, he had been hiding from the outside world as the former expected this current predicament and gave Rudra to a fitting stage to make his official debut. The Voronir subordinate was already comparable to a third-stage saint based on stats alone, but after he ate Axel's body that was none from this world, he gained an immense boost in strength and levels, and now, he was already comparable to a fourth-stage saint just in terms of physical strength. In his hands was Atlan. The legendary rank trident was created by Throck. the one which carried the will of the guardian dragon. Rudra had the ability to comprehend and use the bloodline effects the most in their group. Thus, he managed to subdue the will and control the aura of this weapon perfectly. On the surface, Atlan looked like an epic rank weapon normally, and only when Rudra willed it, it would show its true strength and the dragon's aura during a battle. Khan as Legolas had told Rudra to hide his presence previously and introduced Omega as Raiden, showcasing only him as their fourth stage saint. Omega had also broken through after eating Drigger's core to become a being comparable to a fourth stage saint after breaking the final threshold inside the Chamber of Exaltation. So now, Khan planned to break the last line of resistance and send a clear warning to all the saints gathered here. Thus, Rudra made his appearance and overturned the situation in their favor. With 2 saints present on their side, their total strength became too terrifying. This is Rudra Fafnir, an old acquaintance of ours who recently arrived in Alfheim and decided to join our guild, revealed Legolas with a coquettish tone, not hiding his shameless grin. Since we're revealing our battle prowess, let me go a bit overboard, he said, and the very next second, boom! 3 bursts of shockwaves filled the entire hall as 1 crimson red, 1 brown and 1 blue pillar emerged from behind Legolas, the source being 3 of his commanders. The entire group of saints on the opposite side were left flabbergasted again as Dante aka Jugram, Loki aka Cyril, and Icarus aka Oliver also revealed their strength as second stage saints respectively. The Misthios Guild had 6 saints apart from Legolas when they entered this hall, but everyone was under the impression that they were only first stage saints. But suddenly, 3 of them turned out to be second stage saints, along with the 2 fourth stage saints. This was too big of a powerful force. The cores from the legendary rank monsters Raiden killed in Count Horik's territory went to these subordinates back then, allowing them to break past their limits and make a breakthrough alongside Omega. Just that Khan had ordered them to hide their strength to gauge the true intentions of these saints amassed here. All these subordinates were given the cores based on priority. Omega was speed, Cyril was magic, Jugram was attack power, and Oliver was Skyforce of their guild. They were needed for many of the mercenary jobs based on the demand of many clients when Khan poached them using the intel acquired from Logan. Thus, they were the best choices for him to upgrade first. Now, only Blackwell and Armin were left as Ronin didn't need cores. But fortunately, Rudra had also finished and given them a surprise. With this lineup, their situation had completely changed. Hiding behind your subordinates. Some strong leader you are. Scoffed off Sedaris, still trying to pick a bone with Legolas as if he would not stop no matter what. Even the other guild leaders, including Lager the sneered inwardly. None of them had the will or confidence to go against this group anymore. You're right. In the end, nobody would look up to a weak leader when his subordinates are way too stronger than him. The law of the jungle only acknowledges the strong, responded Legolas with discerning eyes. But I never said I was done with going overboard. He spoke and let out an evil grin. Boom! Once again, Legolas revealed his black and red oppressive saint pressure. But this time there was a big qualitative change. Third stage saint! Shouted one of the guild leaders who was an orange tigerkin knight. Everyone's eyes were popping out in shock. One after another, the people from Misthios Guild were just flexing their manpower, almost giving a heart attack to the onlookers at this point. In the past month, Khan had also finished absorbing Axel's divine key. He was currently level 458, comparable to an intermediate third stage saint. Axel himself was a legit third stage saint, but he was a chosen hero. This divine key was different from a normal saint's core, so it took Khan a lot of time to absorb it. And since Chamber of Exaltation along with his War Deity body boost required 2 times normal resources, his breakthrough was stalled for quite some time. From outer appearance, he was a third stage saint, but in terms of raw fighting power, range, and physical stats, Khan was actually comparable to a normal beginner fourth stage saint at this moment. Yet, he chose to display his rank at this moment instead of hiding it. The main reason why Legolas and all of his commanders were going overboard instead of choosing to act like an underdog was simple. Not all battles were won with fists and weapons. Some battles were won with spirit. Legolas used a simple effective battle tactics from Art of War. Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. And with this overwhelming display of strength in both numbers and ranks, they didn't just send a loud and clear message of might and superiority but also established their unquestionable hierarchy as they broke their enemy's willpower. Everyone understood one thing clearly at this point. The Misthios wasn't a rookie guild anymore. It was the new overlord of Alfheim. With Legolas revealing himself as third stage saint, no one had the guts or even slight courage to go against the Misthios guild anymore. The number 1 guild, aka the 12 Valkyries, was no different. Misthios had a total of 9 saints. 2 of them were 4th stage saints while 1 was a 3rd stage. A total of 3 2nd stage saints and 3 1st stage saints. This was a lineup far stronger than any other guild. Even the 12 Valkyries had only 1 4th stage saint and 1 3rd stage saint. Among their group, 4 were 2nd stage saints and the rest were 1st stage saints. In terms of overall firepower based on rank, the Misthios guild outshined even with 3 less saints on their side. What no one here knew at this moment was that it wasn't the end of it all. Khan still had Ranobes, aka the 3rd stage saints core that he would soon absorb in upcoming months. Even if it didn't help him break through, it would still be enough to make him a peak 3rd stage saint. Then who would be able to even touch their guild? On that level, Khan could at least fight an intermediate 5th stage saint by himself if he went all out. On top of it, both Rudra and Omega, given their mythical rank and current levels, were fully capable of even killing a peak 5th stage saint. If they both fought together, maybe even standing on the same footing with a 6th stage saint wouldn't be impossible. The strongest person in the entire Alfheim was a 6th stage saint, namely an elf from the Imperial Guard. But their line of people didn't mix with mercenary guilds unless someone committed a crime, which they were caught of. So other than that person, not a single soul could go against their guild now. Forget suppressing them. They'd be lucky if the Misthios guild did not find trouble with them. Now all the guild leaders were in a lurch, because soon this news will spread and it would be a problem to keep the current clients they had. Because the type of people they dealt with preferred the strongest as it ensured the safety of their assets. Business was not a family relationship. The preferences shifted as soon as interests did. Everyone present in the meeting also understood that Misthios, on paper, was already the strongest guild in the entire Alfheim. Means Legolas Ragnarsson hadn't come here to settle their misgivings and give in to their demands, knowing that he could be oppressed with 31 saints present here. No. He came here to establish his dominance, that there was a new overlord of this domain, and without knowing, all of them were just witnesses of his official coronation. So, are we done discussing? I will keep my word. And your guilds do not find trouble with us, we won't find with yours. If your people come across mine where our interests collide, look the other way or heads will start rolling. There won't be a second warning. Legolas gave a final intimation. This warning was also given to the 12 Valkyries as he daringly gazed at Lagertha and her saints. So let's hope there won't be another incident where all of us have to meet like this again, said Legolas and got up from his throne. The throne disappeared and the Ironborn elf walked out, followed by his 2 strongest commanders and the rest of his subordinates. After they left the manor, no one dared to kick up a fuss. Sigh. Most of them sighed as after the Misthios guild left, majority could now stand up on their feet again. Everyone had a dejected and also infuriated expression, but nobody dared to curse or even speak loudly. For the first time in their lives, all of them were thoroughly suppressed and also humiliated by a newcomer in town. Why did it happen? The answer was obvious. It was because of strength. It was a form of power that intelligence and knowledge couldn't always overcome. It was as important as the latter two, and you could never stand at the top without it. In the evening of the same day, the 12 Valkyries held a group meeting in their main headquarters. This group had only 4 humans while others belonged to different races. And all of them were showing their anger and cursed their entire ancestry. Who cares? They were really hot. Especially that Raiden Hrodvitson and Rudra Fafnir. I could barely stop myself from pouncing on them. Spoke a female saint with saliva dripping from her mouth as she revealed a lascivious expression. But the other Valkyries rolled their eyes and chose to ignore her, as if they expected nothing else from this female belonging to a succubus species. At the front of this long table where the Valkyries were seated, 3 human females had a gloomy expressions. One of them was Rose Hightower, a second-stage swordsmaiden, while the one on the opposite side was the vice president of their guild. "Those Misthios bastards? Who do they think they are?" she bellowed in rage. "Don't do anything stupid. We're not their match," said Lagertha with a constricted expression. "How can you say that, Guildmaster? You're our strongest saint," spoke the silver-haired vice president, who seemed to be a magician. "I bet none of you could feel it because you're not a 4th-stage saint like me. Raiden Hrodvitson and Rudra Fafnir. They may be 4th-stage saints, but their aura and saint pressures were nothing like I've seen before. Forget me, if both I and Sedaris fought together with just one of them, we would still lose," she revealed with a helpless countenance. "Because I've already faced a similar aura once before. Their auras were similar to that of a 5th-stage saint," she explained. Gasp! All the female saints gasped. "But then why do they follow that iron-born elf? He's too weak to command them," queried another member who was an archer. "Their identity is still too mysterious. Let's stay out of their way for now. There's no shame in being the number 2 guild. At least we won't be as miserable as the LNP guild," spoke Lagertha. Unlike her appearance, she wasn't a hot-headed woman but a very calm and calculative one. "Because those men aren't the type to settle a score with just words or diplomacy," she iterated. "What do you mean?" asked Rose. "Did none of you notice this?" the guildmaster asked as she looked around her group. "Notice what?" queried the magician saint. "Sigh." Lagertha sighed and explained. The way Sedaris was hellbent on making an enemy of Misthios' guild and trying to get all the guilds to act against them, even going as far as instigating a battle, his motives weren't professional but personal. "I could tell the real cause after noticing his expression," she declared. "It is because the Misthios guild." She declared the reason why she chose not to make an enemy of this new guild with a somber voice. "Killed their vice president just to make a statement." Back in the main headquarters of the Misthios Guild headquarters, Khan stood outside the topmost balcony of his mansion and looked around the current settlement. "Finally, I'm done settling my roots in this empire. Now I have nothing to worry about." He spoke with a content smile. "Now I guess I have to spend a few months on my last plan." He revealed an exhilarated expression. The expansion. 3 months later. Tongue. The noise of hammers banging on metallic joints echoed incessantly throughout the surroundings while burning flames arose, joined by the sound of wood being cut by multiple carpenter workers. Legolas looked at the construction going on in front as thousands of workers from numerous species were carrying on with the work of constructing new buildings in the 5-kilometer radius of the Misthios Guild headquarters. At this moment, the total number of guild members had risen to 7,000 people and the guild was expanding its territory. In the past 3 months, Misthios Guild had a meteoric rise in fame and also in their clientele after their lineup of powerful saints was revealed to most of the top brass in various sectors of Alfheim. And their way to take half payment in cores and ores was affordable to many, so like a moth attracted to the flame. Nearly 60% of all the high-end clients who needed the help of mercenaries had approached them and made deals with them. Just as Khan had predicted, the way he set the foundation of his guild had shaken the very foundation of this community and established themselves as the number 1 guild of Alfheim to the point that they didn't have enough people to send for these jobs. Hence, Khan decided to expand the guild, and with their rising popularity and extremely appealing offers set for the members, many people joined their guild. And the ongoing construction in front of Legolas was the result of that event. Now, they didn't have enough facilities to house all these people, so he decided to invest in building new lodgings for their guild members to live in. "At this rate, I will have to expand in the next few months again," spoke Legolas with a tranquil expression. Just then, 2 figures arrived from the sky and stepped through the balcony of his office. "How did it go?" asked the elf guild leader to the new arrivals. These 2 powerful saints were none other than Rudra and Omega. Instead of responding to him, Rudra took out something from his new high-tier space ring and held it in his hand. A horrified expression of a middle-aged elf on a detached head came into sight. Legolas then nodded and sighed in relief. "This should be enough to make everyone lose any ideas to make trouble for us," he said in a somber voice. The detached head belonged to none other than Sedaris of Arn, the fourth stage Saint President of the LNP Guild. Over a month, the LNP Guild had been creating unnecessary trouble for them despite the display of overwhelming might during that meeting 3 months ago. Purposely taking commissions from the rival parties who stood in way of the clients that hired Misthios' guild for the job, then harassing some low-ranked members of their guild in restaurants, mercenary association, and even their homes. Under their president's orders, they even tried to poach the clients the Misthios guild already had by offering lower prices despite taking tremendous losses. Legolas aka Khan understood that Sedaris was a very vengeful elf who would stop at nothing to get back at them. But Khan couldn't just outright kill him. Sedaris was a native of Alfheim and had a lot of allies in this city, something their guild couldn't oppress in such a short time when they had just settled themselves properly. Thus Khan decided on a different strategy this time. The one which would kill even the slightest chance of suspicion towards them, and no one would even look into the matter seriously. So since the past month, Khan and the gang had been taking down all the influential and powerful people connected to Sedaris by either revealing their dark secrets or some crimes such as scams, bribery cases, and many more things. Soon, all the people in power who had ties to him started losing their standing in society, and offices got caught and punished by the imperial rule, and even the top-ranking officers of the military weren't spared in their quest. This was no different than a surgical strike. In the end, Legolas had taken out all the people this elf was relying on, even the ones from the underworld organizations and the black market. Recently, many people took a hint that someone very powerful was targeting Sedaris and the LNP Guild. Thus, they started avoiding the elf and cut off all business ties with him. Even 30% of the guild members whose mandatory period was over abandoned the guild. As for killing the elf, even luring him out by himself to a secluded place took a lot of planning and weeks to set everything in motion. But after he fell for it, Rudra and Omega ambushed him outside of Alfheim in a barren area where no one would usually go. In this battle, however, Omega only used gravity domain but did not engage in combat. Rudra chose this fight as a testing ground. "So how would you assess it?" asked Khan to Omega, who was currently in his Raiden persona. Omega rolled his eyes out and looked at Rudra with disdain. "He has only brute strength and no fighting skills or any techniques. Even a beginner-ranked trident or spear user has more skill and finesse," declared Omega as he sneered, not hiding his disgust towards this new commander of their guild in the slightest. "Hey, I'm not like any of you who were created using fighting class people of different jobs. Even all of your swordsman skills originated from that peak Grandmaster Swordsman Arkham. So don't give me that attitude," rebuked Rudra angrily. "So what? Other than the skills Master gave me, I improved and perfected most of them by myself. Everyone else has done the same so far, freeloader. If you didn't have that overly strong body and impenetrable defense, that elf would have killed you easily." He revealed about the happenings of the battle. "TCH, I would have eventually killed him anyway. I have high-rank regeneration abilities," said Rudra and sat on a chair in the office. "That's not the point, you dim-witted buffoon. What if he had run away? We got the guy because I was obstructing all of his escape routes. So you only swung that trident like a rookie. In the end, I had to use gravity imprisonment so you could land the killing blow." He iterated and continued. His following words even left Khan gobsmacked. "You're a disappointment to this family." Right before Khan, Omega declared Rudra as the disappointment of the family, like an Asian parent looking at the bad grades of their child. But the very next moment, Rudra flared up in rage after being talked down so candidly. "Oh really? Then why don't we have a bout?" provoked Rudra as he pointed the end of his trident towards Omega. "Gladly. Let's see if I can cut your head or not," replied Omega with eyes filled with battle intent while placing his hand on the katana. Khan on the other end had a tired face. This wasn't the first time of their quarrel ever since Omega became a fourth stage Saint Rudra managed to get a human form. Every week, these two would argue over one thing or some minor issue. And sometimes, these two would even leak their auras of fourth stage saints unrestrained, which resulted in many people fainting inside their headquarters settlement spread over multiple buildings. Yet, Khan was helpless, no different than a helpless parent watching his sons fighting each other. Enough! Can't you two at least act like grown-ups? Who the hell in the guild will respect you two if you keep acting like this? He reprimanded both man-children in front of him. Both of them shut up but kept taunting and cursing each other through their gazes. Omega growled. Rudra hissed at the former. Silence. He's right. A saint has a particular job and their mastery of at least one of their weapon skills is also at saint rank. Since you chose a trident, you will have to practice daily and unlock those skills on your own. Otherwise, it could blow up our cover. Iterated Khan. Or do you want to fight people stronger than you without having any combat techniques at all? He asked mockingly. Fine. I will start practicing them. Just arrange a trainer for me who would keep his mouth shut, said Rudra with an indignant tone. All right. Did you bring his body? Asked Khan to the latter. Rudra then pulled out the rest of the corpse from his space ring. Absorb, commanded Khan. 3 hours later. What the hell is wrong with this guy? Was he a fake saint? Wondered Khan with an incredulous gaze. Sedaris only had one saint rank skill related to swordsmanship. However, compared to Khan's Sword Emperor, Sword Apostle, Dark Lightning Strike and Dragon Strike, it was mediocre at best. Hence, Khan was greatly disappointed. What he didn't know was that all of his abilities were merged using different and very strong abilities at Grandmaster rank. Because of which, when they rose to saint rank, their effects were 2 to 3 times stronger than a saint of the same rank as him. After calming himself, Khan moved to the next important issue. Anyone wants it? He asked as he used attraction to pull out the fourth stage saint's core that now hovered in the air. No, I need a high-tier core than this, spoke Rudra. Likewise, replied Omega. Just then, a ghastly voice resounded. Master, others aren't high-level enough to use it. Their bodies will explode if they try to absorb it. And you also need to become a fourth stage saint soon. So naturally, you should have it, said Ronan, who appeared out of nowhere. At this moment, all three of them had alarmed expressions. Forget Omega and Rudra. Even Khan hadn't sensed Ronan in the slightest despite having an innate connection with him. When the hell did you arrive? Asked Omega and Rudra in unison. I have been here before you even arrived, spoke Ronan, unbothered to even spare a glance at the two strongest people in their group. Then the topic shifted back to the issue. I became a third stage saint just a few months ago, and although I used Ranob's core, it wasn't even to make a breakthrough, only brought me to the final stage. He revealed. Kid, I'm telling you, you still need at least 5 more months till your body has become adapted to your current rank. Each saint rank upgrade transmutes the body in many ways. Each rank up should have a long break. Otherwise, you'll ruin your body's potential and won't be able to rank up effectively in the future. Spoke Rathnar, his voice echoing in all of their minds. Besides, the Chamber of Exaltation also concentrated mana and world energy by twice, so it will take double the time than a normal saint. And after 5th stage saint, you will have to wait at least a year or 2 before your next rank up. Or you can forget about finding the other half of my soul to become a demigod. It will be a lost cause to hasten your strength so rapidly. He spoke like an authority on this matter. Khan nodded and agreed with his statement, because he could already tell the difference. After he became a 2nd stage saint, he broke through the 3rd stage saint only in close to 3 months because of Axel's powerful core. Then, using Ranob's core, he became a peak 3rd stage saint and was currently level 497. But the last 3 levels weren't rising, as if his body was shutting down excess absorption of world energy altogether. And with what Rathnar said, Khan found this logical. You couldn't go from level 1 to 100 just in a couple of days. Otherwise, all the people in the world would have easily become a saint in just a few months if they had enough resources already arranged. It was one thing if he went from a beginner to a grandmaster within a month, But going from second stage saint to fourth stage saint in succession wouldn't be possible even if he was a chosen hero. The body would either reject these sudden changes or it would explode due to oversaturation of energy while the container itself was weak and thin. Even someone overpowered like Rathnar needed more than 300 years to become a peak saint with the help of the Chamber of Exaltation. Even with his divine abilities, Khan too had to follow the rules of reality. And the more ranks rose, the longer time he would need in the future. "All right then, I will keep it for the future," said Khan. "So what's new? Why did you suddenly show up?" he asked the spirit assassin general. "I have a message from Armin. He is bringing us a new client he met today in the Alchemy Association of Alfheim," stated Ronan with stern experience. "What's so special about it? We already have the big guns of the city as our client," asked Khan curiously. "Because the client," Ronan revealed he came in a hurry to relay this message, "is a saint rank alchemist.